Chapter 26:18, Death of Su Huan. Ling Han strode forward, drawing on the regulations of space as he did so. Pang! Su Huan was still fleeing, yet he immediately crashed into a wall, which sent him flying back. He was deeply astonished. With his strength as a sixth heaven celestial king, what wall wouldn't be shattered by him? Moreover, where in the world had this wall come from? Su Huan focused his gaze, yet he was shocked to discover that this wall was actually Ling Han. I truly overestimated you. With such pathetic behavior, you still have the face to live? Ling Han said coldly. He immediately unleashed a strike at Su Huan. No! Su Huan immediately raised the soul-extinguishing drum to block this strike. This was a celestial tool, so even though he was unable to fully awaken it, it would still be impossible for Ling Han to shatter it with brute strength. Ling Han naturally wouldn't attack a celestial tool head-on. Even though Su Huan couldn't unleash the full power of the celestial tool, if Ling Han dared to attack it head-on, that would be equivalent to triggering the celestial tool to awaken by itself. That would be an extremely foolish move. He retracted his fist at a lightning speed. Su Huan was delighted upon seeing this. He had successfully evaded an attack. Afterward, he would immediately activate a movement technique and cause his speed to increase fourfold. At that time, Ling Han would be unable to catch him. In your dreams, Ling Han said in an ice-cold voice. Pa! Su Huan heard the sound of bones snapping, after which an agonizing pain shot through his body. He immediately stumbled and collapsed to the ground. Half of his body felt numb and unresponsive. His pelvic bone had been shattered by Ling Han's kick. However, celestial kings were celestial kings, after all, so how could a broken bone stop them in their tracks? Su Huan ignored the pain, with his strong desire to live urging him to use his hands to slam the ground. He instantly shot forward. At his level, there was no need to limit his attacks or movement techniques to just using his hands or feet, as one only needed their divine sense to channel the power of regulations. Su Huan didn't dare to even glance at Ling Han. Right now, there was only a single thought in his mind: to escape. I've already said this many times. If others don't provoke me, then I won't provoke them, Ling Han said calmly. If others provoke me, however, I'll repay them with 100 times the fury. Pooh! When he finished saying this, he had already caught up to Su Huan and unleashed a punch, blasting a huge hole into his back. You, actually, dared. Su Huan said in a quivering voice. This punch had directly obliterated his heart, causing a severe wound. However, even more fatal than this was Ling Han's martial intent that was causing chaos inside his body. Su Huan's divine sense was nothing before this martial intent, and the demise of his mind was imminent. This was his doomsday. My father will definitely kill you. Kill you, he bellowed. He then crashed to the ground, his eyes wide open. In this place, celestial kings were worth as much as dogs. What did it matter that he was a sixth heaven celestial king? What did it matter that he was the descendant of a heavenly venerate? Ling Han retracted his fist, and swept his gaze over the 7 remaining people. Pa! 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 They all fell to their knees, trembling in terror. Please don't kill me, they exclaimed as they kowtowed. Ling Han was unfazed, and he simply asked, if I had been captured by you people, would you have let me live? The answer was clearly no. He immediately lashed out. Pa! 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 How could fifth heaven celestial kings hope to block Ling Han's strikes? Their heads exploded one after another. In just a moment, Su Huan and all 8 of his companions were killed. The surroundings were deathly silent. As the spectators gazed at Ling Han, it was as if they were gazing at a corpse. After all, those 9 people had all come from Heaven Transforming City, a city that was guarded by paramount 9th heaven celestial kings. Yet, Ling Han had killed their descendants just like that. Indeed, it would have been joyful to kill them. However, just how much trouble would this cause? Thus, even though Ling Han looked alive, he was, in fact, already a dead person. In this prison for celestial kings, no one could stop Su Fang and the other paramount celestial kings from killing people regardless of who their opponent was. However, Ling Han paid absolutely no heed to this. Since he had already advanced to the fifth heaven, he was confident that he could escape from the grasp of ninth heaven celestial kings. Moreover, his strength was advancing each day and each hour, so when he reached the sixth heaven, it was very likely that he could even rival ninth heaven monarch tiers. In any case, he felt slightly at a loss as he stared at the soul-extinguishing drum. This was a celestial tool that contained a huge amount of divine metal. If he allowed the divine demon sword to engulf it, it would definitely take another step toward becoming a heavenly venerate tool. However, it was a shame that this celestial tool had been forged by a ninth heaven celestial king. In other words, this celestial tool would become even more ferocious when it didn't have a master. As such, even Ling Han didn't dare to touch it. Otherwise, he would have to face the might of a ninth heaven celestial king. Right now, he had no option but to flee if he came across such a powerful being. Forget about it. I'll collect this celestial tool another day, Ling Han thought to himself. It could be said that he had set his sights on this celestial tool. He gazed toward the ancient tomb. Right now, at least 90% of the Celestial King Graveyard's ninth heaven celestial kings were inside this place. Perhaps not all of them, but at least 99% of them had most likely been affected by the black energy as well, causing them to become bloodthirsty and frenzied. If he entered, he would definitely face great peril. Even though he knew this, Ling Han was still extremely resolute as he strode toward the ancient tomb. He was far too curious. Just what in the world was Desolate Moon scheming? Ling Han made his way toward the ancient tomb, and it wasn't long before he disappeared into it. Inside the ancient tomb, Su Fang was currently engaged in an intense battle with a black shadow. He wasn't alone, and there were several other ninth heaven celestial kings battling alongside him. Even so, they were still unable to gain an upper hand. This battle was abnormally difficult. If others saw this, they would definitely exclaim in disbelief. Just what kind of existence was this black shadow? It actually possessed such overwhelming power. Even a team of several ninth heaven celestial kings was unable to suppress it. Looking closely, however, one would discover that this black shadow was actually confined to a small area. Because of this, it was clear that even though Su Fang and the others couldn't win, they couldn't lose, either. However, this black shadow was far too quick, and it was impossible to make sense of what exactly it was. Was it a human or a beast? Or perhaps it was a precious tool or some other matter? At this critical moment, Su Fang suddenly faltered. He was clearly the main force of the team, so his sudden falter naturally subjected his team to immense pressure. A celestial king was instantly struck and sent flying by the black shadow, with a gaping wound appearing on his chest. He had suffered a severe wound. "Hurry, retreat," another ninth heaven celestial king immediately exclaimed. They hurriedly shot back in retreat. Because the black shadow was confined to a small area, it immediately turned around after pursuing them for a short distance. "Brother Su, what's wrong?" the others asked as they turned to Su Fang. Su Fang wore an ice-cold expression as he replied, "My son was killed." "What?" the others exclaimed in deep shock. Who was so audacious? They actually dared to kill someone from Heaven Transforming City? Which audacious person was it? Was it the Desolate Moon Alliance or the Seasons Alliance? Or perhaps it was the 10,000 Dragons Alliance? They think that they can become enemies with Heaven Transforming City with an alliance of a few ninth heaven celestial kings? With a thought, Su Fang made a grabbing motion at the void. He then said, when I retrieve the soul-extinguishing drum, I'll naturally know who the culprit is. The others were even more stunned upon hearing this. Su Huan already had the soul-extinguishing drum, yet he had still been killed? Even if nephew Huan was unable to unleash the full might of the soul-extinguishing drum, he was still capable of reaching the early stage of the 8th heaven, right? That being the case, the culprit at least possesses a battle prowess at the early stage or middle stage of the 8th heaven. Far too many people meet this criterion in the Celestial King graveyard. It doesn't shrink the pool of people at all. However, no one in the younger generation is capable of killing nephew Huan. Thus, the culprit is definitely an old and experienced Celestial King. As they said this, a small blood-red drum had already shot over from the distance, landing in Su Fang's hand. He sensed it slightly, and fury involuntarily spread across his face. The person who killed my son was a 5th heaven Celestial King. Chapter 26:19, Jade Essence Pearl. A 5th heaven Celestial King. The other Celestial Kings faltered upon hearing this. How was this possible? After analyzing the events for half a day, even though all they spoke was nonsense, they confidently confirmed that the culprit was at least an 8th heaven Celestial King. Yet, a measly 5th heaven Celestial King? How could they possess such battle prowess? Was this not inconceivable? Brother Su, perhaps, you saw incorrectly, a Celestial King said. He was a 9th heaven Celestial King, and he was also one of the first Celestial Kings to be locked in the Celestial King graveyard. However, because he was only a monarch tier, he was naturally weaker than Su Shan. However, he also had the backing of a 2nd-tier heavenly venerate, so he was in no way inferior in this aspect. Those who had been tossed into the Celestial King graveyard the earliest all had the backing of heavenly venerates. If others heard his comment, perhaps they would laugh themselves to death. After all, how could a 9th heaven Celestial King see incorrectly? However, the others didn't show any signs of laughing. In their eyes, Su Fang's claim was indeed a complete impossibility. The only explanation was that Su Fang had seen incorrectly. Su Fang humphed upon hearing this. While he was also displeased with their doubt, he also understood that this was indeed unfathomable. He forcefully suppressed his displeasure before saying, I saw very clearly through the soul-extinguishing drum. It was indeed a 5th heaven Celestial King who killed my son. He reiterated his point, and the others had no choice but to believe it. After all, would a 9th heaven Celestial King speak nonsense for no reason? However, what had the culprit relied on to become so powerful? A 5th heaven Celestial King killing a 6th heaven Celestial King. Moreover, nephew Huan was also a monarch tier. Even if we ignore the soul-extinguishing drum, the culprit's strength still definitely reached the 7th heaven. Otherwise, it would have been extremely easy for nephew Huan to escape, a 9th heaven Celestial King analyzed. A cultivation at the 5th heaven, yet a battle prowess at the 7th heaven. His evolution index is at least 11, another 9th heaven Celestial King remarked. Su Fang's gaze was intense as he said in a calm voice, not only my son, but niece Zhaoqing, nephew Yuheng, and the others were also killed by that person. What? The other Celestial Kings exclaimed in shock. Counting the number of people in their group, it was a perfect 9. Moreover, they were coincidentally the parents of Su Huan and the others. They were all followers of Su Fang, so their children were naturally followers of Su Huan as well. There was nothing wrong with this. Upon receiving the sudden news that their children had been killed, which of them could suppress their anger? Flames of fury erupted from their eyes, and they could barely stop themselves from charging out to search for the culprit straight away. Su Fang hesitated for a moment before saying, we've already reached a critical moment here, so we most certainly can't give up. Moreover, that culprit has already entered this realm, so we're better off completing this task before going after him. There's no need to abandon all of our previous efforts. Agreed. The celestial kings all nodded in agreement. In fact, several of them wanted to abandon this task to go after Ling Han straight away. However, since Su Fang had already said this, it would be difficult for them to disagree. In any case, since Ling Han had also entered the ancient tomb, it would only be a matter of time before they crossed paths. Here's wishing that when we meet him, he's still alive. We'll subject him to the most torturous pain in the world before ending his despicable life. Ling Han entered the ancient tomb. There were no gates to this tomb, and there was only an entrance that had been forcefully created by the celestial kings. However, this tomb did indeed house structures inside, and it wasn't just a single solid core. He continued to advance along the path that had also been forcefully carved out, and it wasn't long before this path intersected with the passageways inside the tomb. The walls of this passageway were embedded with pearls that were radiating with a warm glow. However, some had already been dug out and taken. These are Jade Essence Pearl. Ling Han was astonished upon seeing this. Jade Essence Pearls were a type of fruit that grew at the bottom of the ocean. When they ripened, they would automatically fall off the tree and become enveloped by the ice-cold energy at the bottom of the sea. After trillions upon trillions of years, they would then condense into pearls that could elevate the cultivation of celestial kings. Of course, the higher level a celestial king was, the weaker the effects of the Jade Essence Pearl would be. In any case, however, they would still have some positive effects. Now, however, these pearls were actually being used as lights in an unbelievably extravagant manner. Moreover, they were being used for a dead person. This was truly an astonishing sight. Jade Essence Pearls were incredibly rare, so even obtaining a single pearl could be seen as extremely lucky. Now, however, Ling Han could see at least several dozen in this stretch of the passageway. Ling Han reached over to grab one, unleashing his phenomenal power as he did so. However, the Jade Essence Pearls didn't budge a single inch. Ling Han refused to accept this, so he immediately retrieved his divine demon sword, and used its tip to dig into the walls. With the toughness of the divine demon sword, all Ling Han heard was a crack before a Jade Essence Pearl fell into his hands. No wonder some Jade Essence Pearls had been dug out, while others had been left alone. It wasn't that people didn't want them, but rather that they couldn't obtain them. After all, how many people possessed celestial tools? Moreover, those who possessed celestial tools were mostly ninth heaven celestial kings already, so how many of them would care about these Jade Essence Pearls? In addition, even Jade Essence Pearls were only used as lights, so just how astonishing would the true treasures of this place be? With this in mind, who would waste their time digging out these Jade Essence Pearls? It's their choice not to take them. However, I certainly won't abandon this opportunity. Not only did Ling Han start to dig, but he even called the Empress out of the celestial guest residence. She also possessed a celestial tool. With the combined power of this couple, they could naturally reach peak efficiency. Even though the Empress was extremely aloof, thinking that all matters in the world belonged to her, and that these Jade Essence Pearls should be offered to her by others, since Ling Han had spoken, she reluctantly agreed to help. Cling, cling, cling. Clang, clang, clang. They didn't pay any heed to the others as they focused on digging out the Jade Essence Pearls. In any case, so many years had already passed, so wasting some more time here wouldn't make any difference, right? They continued to dig as they advanced, and it was quite clear that Ling Han was much quicker than the Empress. Firstly, his cultivation level was higher, and secondly, the divine demon sword was also more powerful than her celestial tool. In 3 days, they had already advanced several hundred meters. However, the passageway stretched on, and it was as if there were no end in sight. The person resting here is most likely a heavenly venerate, right? Ling Han speculated. Otherwise, even a ninth heaven celestial king couldn't be so extravagant and possess so many Jade Essence Pearls. The Empress nodded in agreement. By the looks of it, it's very likely that the remaining 6 scrolls of the 9 transformations divine scroll are hidden here. Not necessarily, Ling Han said with a shake of his head. It's impossible to guess the thoughts of Desolate Moon, so who knows what he's playing at here. They continued to advance. After several more days, they finally reached the end of the passageway. However, it was also at this moment that they heard footsteps behind them. Judging from the auras, this was most likely a group of 8 celestial kings. After reaching the celestial king tier, one could easily move around without making a sound. However, these people insisted on making their footsteps heard, and this was a clear reflection of their confidence. Or perhaps this was a reflection of their arrogance and fearlessness. It wasn't long before 8 youths appeared behind the couple. Their cultivation levels varied, with some being at the 3rd heaven and others being at the 6th heaven. However, each of them carried an air of arrogance. "Leave the jade essence pearls, and then piss off," a celestial king said. Once he swept his gaze over the Empress, his face immediately lit up. He then pointed at her, and said, "Leave this woman as well." "You're seeking death," the Empress said in a baleful voice. She directly drew her sword, and charged at the 8 people. "You dare?" The 8 people hurriedly moved to block her attacks. Ling Han also lashed out, blocking the 6th heaven celestial kings, and leaving the others to the Empress. They actually dared to target his wife? This naturally enraged Ling Han. His attacks were merciless, and the 2 6th heaven celestial kings were completely no match for him, killed before they could even unleash their trump cards. You've caused huge trouble. You killed Lord Kong Si's only son. Lord Kong Si is a 9th heaven monarch star who possesses a heaven-defying battle prowess. You're dead meat, the others stammered in shock. However, would the Empress pay any heed to this? Heads rolled as her celestial tool continued to dance. Ling Han sheathed his sword, saying in a relaxed manner, "I've already offended numerous 9th heaven celestial kings, so what does it matter if I offend a few more?" Chapter 26-20, Forest of Lightning. Ling Han was like a ruffian. Deep inside the ancient tomb, another group of 9th heaven celestial kings ground to a halt before bellowing in rage. This was naturally Kong Si and the others. Ling Han paid no heed to this. He had already reached the end of the passageway, so he held hands with the Empress as he walked out. Crackle. What welcomed them was a saber-like arc of lightning that measured 300 meters in length. The Empress roared, and was just about to draw her sword. However, Ling Han immediately stepped in front of her as he threw a punch. Pa, pa, pa. Countless sparks flew into the air as the lightning smashed into his fists. The destructive power of this lightning has reached the 6th heaven, so you'll get hurt if you try to face it head-on, Ling Han said. The Empress nodded upon hearing this. No wonder it was said that only those above the 6th heaven could enter this area. In reality, what was required was a battle prowess above the 6th heaven, as only with it could one block these arcs of lightning. Otherwise, one could only flee in disarray. Gazing into the distance, it was clear that this was a forest. There were innumerable towering trees that were all glowing blue and decorated with fat and healthy leaves. Countless sparks flashed among the trees, and these sparks would occasionally join together to form an arc of lightning. Looking closely, the veins of the leaves were also brimming with terrifying arcs of electricity. "These are blue lunar lightning trees," Ling Han exclaimed in shock. Blue lunar lightning trees were a type of mysterious tree that drew from the regulations of lightning for nutrients. When they matured, they would be enveloped in lightning, and even occasionally unleash arcs of lightning into the surroundings. These attacks would possess the destructive ability of a 6th heaven celestial king. Moreover, these trees would also bear lightning core fruit, a paramount treasure for celestial kings who practice the regulations of lightning. Ling Han swept his gaze around, yet he was unable to find a single lightning core fruit. This wasn't strange. He had arrived here so many years after the others, so it was only natural that the lightning core fruits had already been taken by the others. Perhaps the ninth heaven celestial kings were unable to dig out the jade essence pearls, or perhaps it was beneath them to do so. However, picking the lightning core fruits would be as easy as raising their hands. Thus, who would reject this bountiful offer? Ling Han turned to the Empress, saying, "You can enter the celestial guest residence to digest the jade essence pearl first. Do your best to advance as soon as possible." "Sure." Without another word, the Empress immediately entered the celestial guest residence. This place was filled with lightning that possessed the destructive ability of sixth heaven celestial kings, so it would only cause Ling Han more trouble if she remained by his side. Ling Han strode forward. Pa! Upon stepping into the forest, he instantly became a target for the brimming arcs of lightning. Crackle! Arcs of lightning cracked down at Ling Han. Ah! Even eighth heaven heavenly tribulations are a walk in the park for me, so what harm can this do? Ling Han didn't try to dodge or block the lightning at all as he walked through the forest. Pa! 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 Arcs of lightning crashed into him, yet they failed to leave even a single mark. Ling Han's physique had already reached the sixth heaven, so even if he stood there unmoving, sixth heaven celestial kings would still need to exert a huge amount of energy to breach his defenses. Ling Han strolled through the forest of lightning as if he were strolling through a park. He was looking for lightning core fruit that the others might have missed. However, it was a shame that they had all been picked. What ninth heaven celestial kings? Just how stingy are they? They're even picking lightning core fruits. Ling Han spat. These people had completely cleaned this forest of lightning core fruits, not leaving a single one. Forget about it. I should hurry out of this place. However, he faltered just as he was about to make his way out. Strange. If this is the tomb of a heavenly venerate, then what's the point of having this forest of blue lunar lightning trees? To block tomb raiders? What a joke. Will a heavenly venerate set up a sixth heaven obstacle to block others? Hang on. Ling Han stood still. After pondering for a moment, he started to wander around the forest again. Passing through this forest wouldn't take a long time. However, going around it again and again was extremely time-consuming. After 7 days, Ling Han finally stopped again. His eyes were tightly shut, and he silently brought up the images of the past 7 days in his mind. This is a formation. However, it's not a formation used to attack or stop others. If I'm not wrong. Ling Han didn't open his eyes. Instead, he started to walk just like that. After half an hour or so, he came to a stop and opened his eyes. What appeared before him was a blue lunar lightning tree that measured more than 300 meters in height. Sure enough, this is the formation I. A smile appeared on his face. The intention of this formation I is to. Ling Han walked up to the tree, and sat cross-legged beneath it. Crackle. All of the lightning in the forest immediately converged toward him, crackling as it smashed into him. Pass on a celestial technique. Ling Han roared with laughter as he gathered the arcs of lightning into his palms. Azure wood chaotic lightning, he murmured. Arcs of lightning flowed into his body, instantly transforming into numerous symbols that imparted some kind of secret technique. One couldn't obtain this secret technique simply by sitting under this tree. Instead, they needed to first comprehend the layout of this forest and understand how to manipulate these arcs of lightning and fuse them into symbols. Otherwise, it would be impossible to obtain any information. Ling Han called the Empress and bewitching maiden Ro out as well, allowing them to practice the azure wood chaotic lightning alongside him. Having been left by a heavenly venerate, it was certainly no ordinary technique. This was the formation I, and Ling Han had also comprehended the layout of the entire formation. Thus, these arcs of lightning wouldn't carry any destructive ability as they crackled over. Instead, they could help one comprehend the regulations of lightning. Ling Han and the others were advancing far too quickly, so they could only choose a single regulation to focus on. However, none of them had chosen to focus on the great Tao of lightning. Thus, being able to comprehend it right now was a huge help to them. The three of them sat cross-legged as they greedily absorbed the power of lightning and comprehended the mysterious nature of the azure wood chaotic lightning. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 3,000 years had already passed. The lightning in the forest was almost completely absorbed by Ling Han and the others, and they had also continued to ingest jade essence pearls while they had done so. Add to that the acceleration of time, and a whopping 3 million years had already passed in their eyes. The azure wood chaotic lightning was naturally mastered by them. With the help of the jade essence pearls, their cultivation level also improved by a significant amount. Ling Han reached the middle stage of the fifth heaven, while his two wives had already reached the pinnacle level of the fifth heaven. They weren't far from advancing to the next level. It's a shame that we finished all of the jade essence pearls. Otherwise, it would have been amazing if we had advanced to the sixth heaven in a single breath, Ling Han said with emotion. Once he advanced to the sixth heaven, he would possess the ability to battle against ordinary ninth heaven celestial kings. Even if he came across ninth heaven monarch stars, he would still be able to leave with ease and composure. Our cultivation speed is already too high. We can't be too greedy, bewitching Maiden Ro said with a smile. If this had been in the past, she wouldn't have even dreamed that she could one day become a celestial king. Meanwhile, the Empress rubbed her hands in anticipation. She was hell-bent on surpassing Heaven-born so that she could crush this detestable person who dared to wound her husband. Let's go. We've already absorbed all of the lightning in this place, Ling Han said. He extended his right hand. Crackle. Azure lightning danced in his palm, appearing as terrifying as could be. A satisfied smile spread across his face. The might of this azure wood chaotic lightning is quite astonishing. If I strike with this palm, even eighth heaven celestial kings will tremble in fear. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ro was feeling extremely happy. She didn't have a celestial tool, so learning this powerful secret technique was a huge boost to her battle prowess. Huh! Ling Han was just about to speak, yet he immediately looked up ahead, only to see 5 people walking over 4 men and 1 woman. A man was in the lead, and he had 7 ribbons of iridescent light around him, which caused him to radiate with an astonishing aura. Chapter 26-21, The Might of Lightning. The 5 people also saw Ling Han and his 2 wives, and when they glanced over, their gazes all stopped on the Empress. The Empress' beauty was simply breathtaking. The 7th heaven celestial king immediately walked over in an elegant manner, saying, "Hi, I'm Wuxia. May I please know your name, beautiful lady?" The Empress directly ignored him, only replying with a disgusted expression. If she were Ling Han, Wuxia would definitely explode with killing intent and directly charge forward to kill him. However, the Empress was an aloof beauty, so her temperament and expression instead caused Wuxia's heart to itch. He even more so wanted to win over this thorny rose. Celestial Maiden, young Master Huan is the son of Huan Chengbai, someone beside the 7th heaven celestial king said. Lord Huan Chengbai is a 9th heaven monarch star, and he's one of the first people who entered the celestial king graveyard. He's powerful enough to defeat a large city all by himself. To catch the eye of young Master Huan is a fortune of 3 lifetimes. Moreover, young Master Huan is also a 7th heaven monarch tier himself, so he's destined to become a 9th heaven heavenly emperor in the future. Where else are you going to find such a talented person? Wuxia feigned modesty, waving his hands and saying, "It's nothing, I'm merely enjoying the fortune of my father." "Aya, you're too modest, young Master Huan. If I had been young Master Huan, I would have already become as high profile as could be. Only young Master Huan can remain so modest." The four people continued to praise their leader. Meanwhile, the woman's face was filled with jealousy, and she said, "Say, young lady, it's not good to be so reserved. If you miss this opportunity, it might never come by again." Ling Han sighed, saying, "Are you people finished?" The five people were blabbering on without pause, and Ling Han couldn't help but interject. Wan Gaojia scoffed upon hearing this. A measly fifth heaven celestial king didn't deserve any of his attention. However, he still had to feign modesty before the empress, so he said, "Friend, how should I refer to you?" He was afraid that Ling Han was the empress' relative, in which case it would be a bad idea to offend him. Ling Han smiled, and replied, "It doesn't matter who I am, nor do I have the time to deal with you people. Stop buzzing around like flies. You might not find it annoying, but we do." Flies? Wan Gaojia and the others flared up in rage. He actually dared to call them flies? Such audacity, one of the fifth heaven celestial kings said in a baleful voice. "Young Master Wan might be a cordial person, but that doesn't mean that I am too. Humph. If you're not taught a lesson, you truly won't know the heights of this heaven." He immediately lashed out, launching a palm strike at Ling Han. His attack was filled with a sense of contempt toward Ling Han. Indeed, his smack was treating Ling Han as if he were a weakling. A cold glint flashed across Ling Han's eyes as he replied with a casual palm strike of his own. "Ha, don't overestimate yourself," the fifth heaven celestial king said in a cold voice. Even though he was only an emperor tier, the cultivation technique that he practiced was extremely profound. Thus, his battle prowess was far superior to that of ordinary fifth heaven emperor tiers. The two palms quickly collided. Pang! One of the palms immediately shattered, while the other remained completely unaffected, continuing to surge forward. Pooh! The fifth heaven celestial king screamed in agony. Opening his mouth, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. In fact, he couldn't stop vomiting blood, and in the end, even his internal organs were vomited out. He wore an aggrieved expression as he looked at the others, and with a flop of his head, he directly collapsed to the ground, dead. This. Wan Gaojia and the three others were transfixed with shock. In a battle at the same cultivation level, this fifth heaven celestial king had actually been this weak? He had been killed with a single strike? Very well. Very courageous of you. Wan Gaojia said in a baleful voice. Even if Ling Han were the empress brother, he would still capture him no matter what. Otherwise, wouldn't his followers become disillusioned? He stepped forward and grabbed at Ling Han. Wan Gaojia was a seventh heaven celestial king, so it was only natural that he should succeed. However, Ling Han remained unfazed as he channeled the azure wood chaotic lightning. Arcs of azure lightning appeared on his right hand, and he again threw a casual palm strike at Wan Gaojia. "You're seeking death," Wan Gaojia said with a cold sneer. A measly fifth heaven celestial king actually dared to attack a seventh heaven celestial king head-on? Just how arrogant was this? He channeled a secret technique, aiming to kill Ling Han with a single strike. Ling Han smiled faintly. Which of them was truly seeking death? Pa! The two large hands clashed, instantly releasing a devastating shock wave that surged into the surroundings. Wan Gaojia suddenly felt an overwhelming force rush over, causing him to involuntarily fly backward. Agonizing pain then shot up his right arm, and looking down, all he could see was a swathe of blood. Arcs of azure lightning chaotically flashed around, climbing up his arm. He was absolutely stupefied. With his battle prowess at the peak stage of the seventh heaven, only those with a battle prowess at the eighth heaven could break his hand with a single strike, right? But, this was only a fifth heaven celestial king? Wan Gaojia crashed to the ground, his body convulsing in indescribable pain and discomfort. The three remaining people were speechless with shock. They could barely accept or even begin to imagine what they were seeing. How can you possibly be so strong? Wan Gaojia exclaimed as he crawled up. His eyes were filled with terror and jealousy as he stared at Ling Han. Just then, he had felt the creeping danger of death. However, the fact that a fifth heaven celestial king was so powerful also caused him to be filled with jealousy. If he could also possess such battle prowess, wouldn't he be able to ignore the threat of ninth heaven celestial kings? Ling Han smiled faintly. If I'm not powerful enough, how am I going to protect my lovers? And how am I going to exterminate rascals like you? Rascal? Wan Gaojia almost went crazy with rage. He was a seventh heaven monarch tier. He was more so the descendant of a heavenly venerate. Yet, this person dared to call him a rascal? He wore a baleful expression as he looked at Ling Han. As long as he managed to flee, he would look for his father, and request him to kill Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head, saying, "You're already in my hands, yet you still want to leave this place alive?" Wan Gaojia humphed upon hearing this. Celestial kings were extremely difficult to kill. Even if he were slightly weaker than Ling Han, the gap between them would only be one minor level at most. Thus, if he was intent on fleeing, how could Ling Han possibly stop him? "I'll remember this," Wan Gaojia said with clenched teeth. After saying this, he immediately leaped forward. Boom! He immediately shot off at an astonishing speed. Go! Ling Han didn't give chase. Instead, he simply raised his right hand. Crackle! An arc of azure lightning transformed into a spear, which Ling Han then launched forward. The lightning spear was astonishingly quick, catching up to Wan Gaojia in a flash. It then pierced into his back, forcefully nailing him to the ground. Ah! Wan Gaojia screamed in agony. His heart was brutally penetrated by the devastating power of the lightning, and this lightning was more so chaotic as it coursed through his body. He felt as if he were being dismembered. Hurry up and release young Master Wan. He's the only son of Lord Wan Chengbai. If you kill him, your entire clan will be massacred. The three remaining people immediately started to threaten Ling Han. Humph! Ling Han replied with a wave of his right hand. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Another 3 lightning spears flew forth, nailing all 3 people to the ground. These people were far weaker than Wan Gaojia, and their life force was instantly wiped out by the azure wood chaotic lightning. Lightning this represented the punishment of heaven and earth, this was the symbol of destruction and chaos. If Wan Gaojia hadn't been a powerful 7th heaven monarch tier, he would have already become a corpse. Let's go, Ling Han said, appearing slightly bored. Following his advance in cultivation, those who could rival him also became fewer and fewer in number. The Empress and bewitching Maiden Ro nodded before following after him. Only a long time after they left did Wan Gaojia's head finally droop to the side, his vitality extinguished. Chapter 26-22, Giant Insect. Ling Han's ability to attract trouble remained the same as always. He was always able to come across second-generation young masters with astonishing backgrounds. Some coveted the Empress' beauty, while others purely wanted to cause trouble. All of these people were naturally suppressed by Ling Han. In just a few months, several hundred second-generation young masters had already died by his hands. One could imagine just how many ninth heaven celestial kings in the ancient tomb wanted his head. However, Ling Han didn't give a toss about this. In fact, he was slightly eager to come across these ninth heaven celestial kings as battling against them would allow him to experience profound pressure, and therefore accelerate his advance to the ninth heaven. The 3 of them exited the lightning forest before crossing an incredibly wide river. They then traversed across a snowy mountain before finally entering the plains. The grass was only as tall as their feet, and it felt extremely soft and comfortable to the step. However, it was also in these plains that many celestial kings lost their lives. In fact, their blood dyed large swathes of the grass crimson red. This was extremely uncanny. Just how powerful and domineering was celestial king blood? If this blood splattered onto rocks, the rocks would immediately disintegrate and turn into dust. If it splattered onto grass and plants, then these grass and plants should have immediately exploded apart. How could it stain them like the blood of ordinary mortals? Ling Han bent down to examine it. After a moment, he frowned, and said, "The domineering power of the blood has already been erased. It only contains the shell of a celestial king's might. It looks fearsome, but it's actually completely useless." "What about their corpses?" the Empress asked. They searched everywhere, but they couldn't find the corpses of the celestial kings at all. Strange. Perhaps none of them died? There were signs of an intense battle, with large swathes of the plains wrecked. Strangely, however, they could only see the blood of celestial kings and no corpses. This was seemingly at odds with what the destruction suggested. "Be careful," bewitching Maiden Rou said. However, the Empress was brimming with fighting spirit. She hadn't fought for an extremely long time. They continued to advance. The plains were boundless, and it was as if they had no end. Boom! The ground before them suddenly cracked open, with a giant spear 30 meters long suddenly stabbing out from the earth, and viciously crashing down on Ling Han and the others. This spear was shrouded in the Great Tao, so even if one weren't struck, just being shaken by the fluctuations of the Great Tao alone would already cause enough trouble. The Empress humphed as she slashed down at the spear. Wang! Her sword struck the giant spear. Celestial tools were invincible, and those that weren't celestial tools or ninth heaven celestial kings would be unable to rival them. Thus, the giant spear was instantly cut in two, causing gray liquid to spray into the air. However, the Empress was also sent flying back. The momentum of the giant spear had been far too great, far more than what the Empress was able to resist. Zhi! There was a deafening squeak as a giant being suddenly tunneled out from the ground. This was a giant insect with 6 legs. It measured 60 or so meters in length, and only one of its 2 spear-like forelegs remained right now. This was because the other one had been severed by the Empress. Its body was covered in black scales, and it was also enveloped in an eerie aura of death. It was as if this insect were a monster that had crawled out from the depths of hell. It glared at the Empress as gray blood continued to flow from its severed leg. However, this bleeding quickly stopped, and there was a black glow as the severed leg started to regenerate. In just a few seconds, the regeneration was already complete. The giant insect howled before stomping 4 of its legs and lunging at the Empress. Meanwhile, its 2 forelegs lashed out at the Empress' jade-like neck. Ling Han humphed as he flashed over, immediately blocking the giant insect's path. He then reached over to grab at the giant insect. The giant insect naturally couldn't ignore him, so it changed the direction of one of its slashing forelegs, targeting Ling Han instead. Ling Han raised his right palm, and channeled the azure wood chaotic lightning. He then combined this with the power of the 9 transformations divine scroll before unleashing a punch. Wang! The foreleg of the giant insect was like a divine spear, and in comparison, Ling Han's fist appeared absolutely tiny and inconsequential. The outcome of this clash was seemingly clear for all to see. However, when the giant leg actually collided with Ling Han's fist, there was a blinding flash of light as it was surprisingly sent flying back. Crack! A crack appeared on the giant leg, and this crack continued to spread further and further. In just an instant, cracks had already enveloped the entire leg. Pa! The giant leg surprisingly shattered into pieces. This brought the giant insect immense pain, causing it to continuously emit a strange scream. Balls of nether flames erupted from its body, signifying its white-hot fury. This time, however, the giant insect didn't immediately launch an attack. Instead, it stared at Ling Han with its lantern-sized eyes that were filled with apprehension. Even though it was a violent being, it still possessed innate alertness to danger. It recognized that Ling Han was extremely powerful, so it couldn't act in a rash manner. However, Ling Han naturally wouldn't give it time to rest, continuing to charge forward, and throwing a punch at the giant insect's head. The giant insect hurriedly reared its forelegs to block. Pang! However, how could it block Ling Han's attacks? Its thick scales were instantly cracked open, after which Ling Han charged inside its head with azure lightning enveloping his body. The giant insect's movements immediately froze. Pa! After a short moment, it crashed to the ground, with a gaping hole appearing in its scales. Ling Han strode out of this hole with azure lightning around him, not a single mark on his body. Those celestial king corpses were mostly eaten by such things, right? Bewitching Maiden Rose said. Ling Han nodded in confirmation. Many celestial kings had definitely died in this place, yet there was no corpse in sight. Thus, it was only natural that they had entered the stomachs of these giant insects. He grabbed a leg of the giant insect, and started to carefully examine it. Astonishment spread across his face, and he said, "There are many thin and hollow spikes on these legs. With a single swipe, it can send countless of these spikes into one's body. It can then use them to absorb the essence from one's blood. That being the case, even the blood shed by celestial kings would only be ordinary blood. Thus, they would be unable to cause any destruction. Let's go." However, after a short while, they were attacked by another giant insect. When these insects remained hidden underground, their auras would be completely concealed, thus rendering them impossible to discover. Only when they broke through the surface of the earth to attack would one be able to discover them. To fifth heaven and sixth heaven celestial kings, however, this would already be too late. Fortunately, Ling Han and his two wives were no ordinary fourth heaven or fifth heaven celestial kings. Thus, they were entirely capable of dealing with these giant insects. After a dozen or so days, they finally made their way out of the plains. What appeared before them was a small river that even had a wooden bridge spanning over it. Beside this bridge was a small grass hut, in front of which sat an elder on the ground. He was smoking a water pipe which was gurgling with bubbles. A large group of people stood around this elder, and they all wore sulky expressions as if they had come across an insurmountable difficulty. Looking closely, they discovered that this elder was actually engaged in a game of Go with someone else. His tactics were extraordinary, and it was thus that he had the room to smoke his water pipe. Meanwhile, his opponent's movements were stiff, with his brows knitted into a deep frown. "What's going on?" Ling Han tapped the shoulder of the person in front of him, and asked, "Brother, what's this all about?" The person was given a fright. A person had actually approached him without him noticing their aura. If Ling Han hadn't tapped his shoulder, and had instead attacked him, wouldn't he have already become a corpse? However, upon discovering that Ling Han was only at the fifth heaven, he involuntarily heaved a sigh of relief. No matter what, he was still a sixth heaven celestial king. It was most likely because he was engrossed in the game of Go that he hadn't noticed the approach of this brat. With his temper, he should have turned back around and ignored Ling Han. After all, how dared a fifth heaven celestial king question a sixth heaven celestial king? However, upon seeing Ling Han's mighty and dignified countenance, the man changed his mind for some unknown reason, replying, "If you want to cross this river, you have to first beat this old man in a game of Go." Chapter 26-23, Playing a Game of Go. To cross the river? Ling Han asked in astonishment. Isn't that simple? This river was only 30 or so meters in width, so couldn't it be crossed with a casual leap? It's not that simple, the burly man who looked around 30 years old replied. His eyes were clouded by a layer of black that radiated with an aura of bloodlust. This was a sign that he had been affected by the black energy of this place. However, he didn't attack Ling Han, and this was because he had been intimidated by the invisible might of Ling Han. However, he didn't realize this himself. He continued, "If you're a 7th heaven, 8th heaven, or 9th heaven celestial king, you can naturally cross this river with ease. However, those beneath these levels will be obliterated into smithereens by the river water if they try to forcefully cross." Huh? It's that powerful? Ling Han casually asked. I know, right? Otherwise, how could we have been stopped here, the burly man said. He pointed his chin in the direction of the elder, and said, he isn't a real person, but he's unbelievably powerful. He's guarding that bridge, and those who try to force their way over will only be killed and tossed into the river by him. Of course, it's still possible to cross the bridge if you want. You just have to beat him in a game of Go first. However, this isn't any ordinary game of Go. You'll know if you try. Pooh. As if providing further information for this remark, the person sitting before the elder suddenly spat a mouthful of blood in a violent manner. His face instantly became as white as a sheet. Thud, thud, thud. He stumbled back 7 steps, after which he swayed for a short while, and almost collapsed headfirst into the ground. Defeated again. Sigh. Moving the pieces requires one to use their divine sense. Once the pieces are eaten, their divine sense will also be wounded. This person has already lost 3 times, so it's very likely that his divine sense has already been wounded to the limit. Sigh. I've already been here for 16 years, yet I've only seen 7 people successfully crossing this bridge. This is far too difficult. Everyone shook their head in disappointment. They had all challenged the elder to a game of Go before, yet which of them hadn't suffered humiliating defeat? Which of them hadn't had their divine sense wounded? Ling Han's interest was involuntarily piqued. He strode over and sat down before the old man. Who is this brat? He's a new arrival, right? I haven't seen him before. Heh, the youth knows no fear. Does he think this will be easy? They all chattered among themselves. Shut up, the Empress chided in a cold voice. Just who do you think you? Someone instinctively retorted, but upon seeing the Empress' stunningly beautiful and aloof face, they couldn't help but feel stifled. How could they still speak? How beautiful! How can such a breathtaking beauty exist in the world? The Empress' peerless beauty instantly elicited cries of astonishment from the crowd. Many people stared at her with greed and lust. They were all affected by the black energy, so they had all become bloodthirsty and fearless, with their senses of respect and apprehension greatly reduced. She's mine, a person shouted as they immediately lunged over, grabbing at the Empress. She was only a measly 4th heaven, so capturing her would naturally be as easy as could be. Whoosh! There was a flash of ice-cold light as the Empress drew her sword, slashing down at that person. How could that person have known that the Empress, a 4th heaven celestial king, actually possessed a celestial tool? He simply thought that he could suppress the Empress with his 6th heaven cultivation. Moreover, because he had been afraid of others snatching her first, he had lunged over with all his might. He hadn't just reached over, as that would have increased the risk of others snatching the Empress away first. Anyhow, apart from 9th heaven celestial kings, who else could block the might of celestial tools? With a single slash, that person had already been cut in 2 at the waist. Blood sprayed through the air, after which intestines and organs also started to spill out. Death soon followed. Everyone was rendered speechless with shock. That was a 6th heaven celestial king. Yet, a 4th heaven celestial king had actually killed them with a single slash? Who could believe this? After mulling over this carefully, they immediately discovered that it wasn't the Empress who was powerful enough to kill the 6th heaven celestial king in a single strike. Instead, it was because the celestial king had been too rash, and it was because of the deadly weapon in the Empress' hand. That was a celestial tool. Their gazes became even more fervent. Not only was she a peerless beauty, but she even possessed a powerful celestial tool. Who could resist such temptation? This was the Celestial King Graveyard, a realm with no rules and regulations. Moreover, these people had all been affected by the black energy, so they were more so reckless and unafraid. However, Ling Han didn't pay any attention to this. The Empress was almost at the fifth heaven, so combined with the might of the celestial tool, she was more than capable of dealing with these people. After all, they were only sixth heaven celestial kings at most. Indeed, those at the seventh heaven could directly cross the river and leave. He calmly sat down, beginning a game of Go with the elder. In this game of Go, he took on the black pieces, meaning that he had the first move. The elder naturally assumed the white pieces. After placing a single piece, Ling Han immediately let out a soft exclamation. This was because the piece surprisingly absorbed a fraction of his divine sense, causing the piece to become a part of him. The elder continued to smoke his water pipe as he contested territory with Ling Han. Pa, pa, pa. In the beginning, they were both lightning quick as they placed their pieces. After 30 or so moves, however, they started to slow down. There were more and more things to consider and calculate. Not only that, but much of Ling Han's divine sense had also been absorbed after completing the 30 or so moves. This naturally affected his calculation and decision-making abilities. He became slower and slower, with each move consuming much more time. However, there was a sandglass beside the Go board, and the sand inside it would start to flow each time it was his turn to move. The sand inside would completely flow to the bottom after around 30 seconds. If he failed to make his move before this, it would count as his defeat. Ling Han made maximum use of this time, not making his move until the moment the time was about to expire. Both he and the elder remained calm and composed. Meanwhile, the Empress was unleashing her deadly fury, with her divine sword dancing around, and causing her to appear like a celestial maiden gracefully dancing among the clouds. However, her dance was one that ended life after life. Chapter 26-24, Divine Fluid Raging Lightning. Before long, Ling Han and the elder approached the endgame. In this stage, both parties would rapidly consume the pieces of their opponent. Thus, the game would be filled with a sense of killing intent. Ling Han's brows were tightly knitted together. With each black piece that was consumed, his divine sense would suffer another blow, causing him to feel increasing discomfort. If it had been someone with a weaker divine sense, their mind and willpower would have extremely likely already collapsed at this point. If it weren't a failure to place a piece in time, it would be a severe wound causing them to misplace a piece, thereby leading to a complete collapse and eventual loss. It was no wonder that few people could defeat this elder in a game of Go. It was simply because their divine sense wasn't powerful enough. With the learning ability of celestial kings, even if they didn't know how to play Go, they could easily become a master after watching a few games. Thus, this wasn't the main obstacle that the celestial kings faced. Fortunately, Ling Han's divine sense had already been tempered by the indestructible Heaven Scroll, which allowed it to become as stable as a mountain. Thus, he remained unfazed and unaffected. He placed piece after piece, resolutely defending his advantage and not allowing greed to cloud his judgment. After another 30 minutes, the results were already set in stone. Ling Han won by 3.5 pieces. Pass, the elder said. Ling Han smiled faintly. Even though his divine sense had been wounded to a certain degree, the process of the game had also been equivalent to a process of tempering his divine sense. Thus, he had also received some benefits as well. Looking around, he discovered that the surroundings were already covered in blood, with heads and corpses littering the ground. The Empress had already concluded her slaughter. However, not everyone had been killed. though the people closest to them were a whopping 50 kilometers away, not daring to get any closer to the brutal murderer in the Empress. "Are you two going to have a game of Go with the old man, or do you want to enter the celestial guest residence?" Ling Han asked. "I'll have a game," the Empress said as she sheathed her sword. She sat down before the old man to play a game of Go with him. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ro shook her head. She was most afraid of racking her brains. The Empress started a game with the old man. In fact, she was extraordinarily skilled in Go, far more skilled than Ling Han. Moreover, her divine sense was also extremely tough, so even though she was affected a little, she still won by a huge advantage of 5 pieces. They both won the right to use the bridge to cross the river. They exchanged a smile before holding hands, and walking onto the bridge. The river flowed very slowly, yet they could clearly see the black lightning crackling within it. Even through the bridge, they could still feel an overwhelming pressure bearing down on them. "Huh!" Ling Han suddenly stopped in his tracks, staring at the river, and saying, "This seems similar to the blue lunar lightning trees from before." The Empress' eyes lit up, and she exclaimed, "Perhaps this river contains another lightning element secret technique?" "Let's have a look," Ling Han said. Looking down like this, they could only see the arcs of lightning within the river. However, they couldn't rely on this to obtain the secret technique. Just like in the forest, they had to first find the formation eye and familiarize themselves with the layout of the area. Only then could they absorb the lightning into their bodies. Otherwise, they would only be attacked by the lightning. Upon seeing them walk onto the bridge, the celestial kings that had fled into the distance finally dared to return. However, when they saw the 2 people walking back and forth on the bridge, they couldn't help but bare their teeth in frustration. Were these 2 people going to cross the bridge or not? Could they give a clear indication? Just wandering around back and forth. Were they trying to frighten the others or what? The people who had beaten the elder in the past had all crossed the bridge without any hesitation. Which of them had been like these 2? Did they find this fun or what? However, they didn't dare to speak up against Ling Han and the Empress. After all, what if the Empress suddenly developed bloodlust again? Who could endure that? Here. Ling Han had been observing the bridge the entire time. This was a wooden bridge, yet different sections of it had been painted in different colors, separating the bridge into distinct brackets, some big and some small. Each bracket varied in size. Right now, he was standing in a bracket that seemingly commanded the entire bridge. He instantly felt a different sensation. He shared his discovery with the Empress, who also walked over to observe the surroundings from this angle. After a while, they sat down and extended their hands. Crackle. As if being manipulated by some mystical power, the black lightning in the river instantly shot into the air, smashing toward Ling Han and the Empress. The originally calm river immediately became tumultuous, with countless arcs of lightning zapping around and enveloping Ling Han and the Empress, transforming them into balls of lightning. Divine fluid raging lightning. Ling Han and the Empress exclaimed in their minds. After entering their bodies, these arcs of black lightning also transformed into numerous symbols. This was the materialization of the regulations of the Great Tao. Azure wood chaotic lightning, divine fluid raging lightning. This is the act of imbuing the 5 elements into lightning, Ling Han said. He couldn't help but sing words of praise, saying, "How incredible and wonderful." The person who flawlessly combined the great Tao of lightning with the 5 elements and created this cultivation technique is far too genius. The Empress nodded in agreement. Cultivation techniques had been developed for heaven knew how many years, so it was only natural that countless prodigies had also walked this world. Judging from this, there should also be metal lightning, earth lightning, and fire lightning, Ling Han said. I have a feeling that these 5 types of divine lightning can be fused together. At that time, using the 5 elements to cast lightning attacks will definitely result in astonishing destructive ability. This is, a heavenly venerate technique, the Empress exclaimed. It's similar to the 9 transformations divine scroll. That senior split the divine scroll into 9 scrolls, allowing even first heaven celestial kings to practice it. Meanwhile, this is a technique wherein lightning is contained within the 5 elements. It works in a similar manner to the 9 transformations divine scroll. The wisdom of our predecessors is truly eye-opening. Ling Han exclaimed in praise. The two of them stopped talking, instead focusing their full attention on absorbing the power of the lightning. This was not only the regulations of lightning, but also the regulations of water. Thus, absorbing the power of this lightning could elevate their comprehension of both water and lightning. After observing the seated and silent Ling Han and Empress for several days, the celestial kings were finally unable to contain their urge to return. What are they doing? Manipulating the lightning to enter their bodies? Are they seeking death? That stunning beauty! What a great shame! That celestial maiden doesn't even blink when she massacres people. Do you want to seek death? However, if they've truly died, then why isn't the lightning stopping? Gasp! Perhaps, they haven't died? They're being attacked by such terrifying lightning, yet they're still not dead? Everyone found this to be inconceivable. However, after 1 day, 10 days, and 100 days, their feelings of shock and disbelief gradually transformed into numbness and acceptance. It was as if the bridge had always been so. They started to compete with the elder again, attempting to beat him and win the chance to cross the bridge. However, it was a pity that no one managed to succeed. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years. Time flew, and it was only natural that many newcomers arrived. Upon discovering the tumultuous river, they were naturally transfixed with shock. After learning that there were actually 2 people amid the lightning, however, all of them scoffed in doubt. Were these people taking them for fools? How could someone survive in such chaotic lightning? Moreover, for 100 years, no less. However, no one could beat the elder, so it was only natural that no one could approach the balls of lightning to observe them. It wasn't that no one had attempted to force their way across the bridge. However, these people had all been easily captured by the elder and tossed into the river. There, they were instantly blasted into smithereens by the magnificent power of the chaotic lightning. Only those with a battle prowess at the 7th heaven possessed the right to cross the river. 500 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years. More and more people converged in front of the bridge. Finally, an elite also arrived. He was clearly at the 6th heaven, yet he possessed a battle prowess at the 7th heaven. With a single slash, he parted the lightning and calmly crossed the river. Gasp! Who is this person? He's only at the 6th heaven, yet he possesses a battle prowess at the 7th heaven. Is this a monarch star? Definitely. Otherwise, even monarch tiers at the peak stage of the 6th heaven can only possess a battle prowess at the 6th heaven. It's impossible for them to enter the territory of the 7th heaven. He's called Miao Yingwei, and he's a prodigy from Ice Origin City, someone said in a proud voice. Upon seeing the others look over, he chuckled, and said, "This untalented person is called Changji. I'm merely an insignificant follower of young Master Miao. Young Master Miao is destined to sweep through the entire world," he exclaimed with shining eyes. His face was filled with respect and reverence. Chapter 26-25, Miao Yingwei. Even though Changji's words were extremely exaggerated, none of the surrounding celestial kings could refute his claims. After all, Miao Yingwei's strength had been displayed for all of them to see. Once he unleashed his 7th heaven battle prowess, he could massacre all of them with ease. His battle prowess is nothing more than the 7th heaven, someone muttered quietly. The stunning beauty from before was only at the peak stage of the 4th heaven, yet she possessed a battle prowess at the peak stage of the 6th heaven. Someone beside them nodded, saying, even though that was thanks to her celestial tool, her strength alone was still at least at the 6th heaven. To surpass 2 cultivation levels. She's even more powerful than monarch stars. Even more powerful than me? Miao Yingwei asked. None of them had noticed that he had already split apart the lightning and returned at some time. The 2 people who had spoken hurriedly shut their mouths. Even though they were also at the 6th heaven, they knew that they were no match for Miao Yingwei. If conflict occurred, their only option would be to flee. Otherwise, they would definitely be killed. Speak. Miao Yingwei said with a cold humph. Who can surpass me, Miao Yingwei? The 2 people didn't want to leave, thus they obediently told him about the Empress and her feats. She merely relied on her celestial tool. Miao Yingwei said in disdain. His voice became low, so low that only he could hear what he said as he muttered, to possess a celestial tool. Either she's a descendant of a 9th heaven celestial king from this place, or she's an outsider who's come here to train. His eyes were gleaming. Even though he was extremely talented, he didn't have the support of a heavenly venerate, so he naturally didn't possess a celestial tool. His eyes were red with lust. Regarding the Empress' beauty, however, he didn't believe this at all. Before entering the Celestial King graveyard, he had also been surrounded by countless beauties. What kind of stunning beauty hadn't he seen? The bumpkins in the Celestial King graveyard had seen far too few beauties, so even those who were slightly more attractive would be regarded as stunning beauties. He pointed to the bridge, and asked, "You're telling me that those 2 people are inside the balls of lightning?" After receiving an affirmative answer, he replied with a shake of his head. Even with his strength, he still couldn't withstand the attacks of such lightning for too long. This was to say nothing of enduring it for several thousand years. These 2 people were definitely spreading rumors. How could measly 4th heaven celestial kings achieve such a feat? Let me have a look. He strode toward the bridge. You can't, someone shouted. If you attempt to cross the bridge without beating the elder in a game of Go First, you'll be tossed into the river and killed. Humph. Do I, Miao Yingwei, have anything to be afraid of? Miao Yingwei said as he strode forward. He didn't believe the nonsense of these people at all. He quickly arrived at the foot of the bridge. After hesitating for a brief moment, he ultimately decided to stride forward. Whoosh! There was a flash of lightning as the elder eerily appeared on the bridge. He then reached over to grab at Miao Yingwei. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Miao Yingwei said with a sneer. He replied with a palm strike of his own. Pang! The elder's hand swooped down, and Miao Yingwei's counterattack crumbled into a feeble heap. He was easily captured. Ninth Heaven Celestial King, he exclaimed through clenched teeth. The gulf between them was far too great. Facing such an elite, his only fate was being suppressed. The elder didn't speak at all. Instead, he simply swung his hand. Pa! Miao Yingwei was tossed into the river. Ah! A burst of brilliant light erupted around Miao Yingwei as he surprisingly dashed out of the river, hovering in midair. His eyes were filled with anger and resentment. He didn't die. This is unbelievable. As expected of a prodigy. He's far too powerful. Everyone exclaimed in astonishment. This was the first time they had seen someone survive after being tossed into the river. However, Miao Yingwei didn't appear proud at all. When he was tossed into the river, his cultivation had actually been sealed. Thus, his only option had been to await death. However, he possessed a rare treasure, one that he had obtained from an ancient site. This rare treasure would only activate when he came across a life-and-death situation, and it could only be used a single time. Just then, this rare treasure had unleashed its might. This signified that he had already died once. He had obtained nothing, yet he had wasted a life-saving treasure. How could he be happy? He sat down cross-legged next to the river. Right now, he was even more intent on obtaining the celestial tool. Otherwise, he would feel far too much regret. 100 years, 200 years. Finally, the lightning became weaker and weaker, revealing Ling Han and the Empress. As if sensing this, Miao Yingwei immediately opened his eyes. Upon glancing over, astonishment instantly swept over his face. Surprisingly, there were indeed two people inside the balls of lightning. Moreover, they were only at the fourth heaven and the fifth heaven. This was absolutely unfathomable. Chapter 26-26, Killed. Miao Yingwei wore an expression of disdain as he said, "I myself am invincible, so do I need to rely on my father or whatnot?" His words were filled with pride and arrogance. Oh. Ling Han was slightly astonished. He genuinely hadn't come across someone as confident as Miao Yingwei in this place. This was unlike those second-generation young masters who harbored an inner sense of inferiority while being haughty. This was because they were nothing more than prisoners. Perhaps. Ling Han smiled, and said, "You're an outsider who's come here to train, am I correct?" Miao Yingwei's expression involuntarily changed. Even though he was brimming with confidence, he only possessed a cultivation at the sixth heaven. At most, his battle prowess could only reach the peak stage of the seventh heaven. Thus, if faced with eighth heaven and ninth heaven celestial kings, his only fate would be death. If his identity as an outsider were exposed, he would definitely be hunted by everyone in the celestial king graveyard. At that time, his only option would be to hide in some unknown corner. Utter nonsense, he spat in a baleful voice. He lashed out again, not giving Ling Han the opportunity to speak. Ling Han laughed upon seeing this. He knew that he had guessed correctly. He casually counterattacked, easily blocking Miao Yingwei's attack. At this moment, would he still need to care about attacks at the seventh heaven? Miao Yingwei was relentless as he unleashed attack after attack. However, he became increasingly astounded. Ling Han was only replying with casual counterattacks, yet his defenses remained as sturdy as could be. He appeared extremely relaxed as he blocked his attacks. Miao Yingwei could only concede that this person was no weaker than him. However, how could such a freak appear in the Celestial King graveyard? A thought occurred to him, and he exclaimed, "So you're also an outsider." The myriad worlds were brimming with countless prodigies. It was because of this that there could exist those who were more freakish than him. Ling Han replied with a faint smile. He then extended his right hand, grabbing at Miao Yingwei. He channeled the divine fluid raging lightning, treating Miao Yingwei as his training dummy. He would use him to familiarize himself with this secret technique. Miao Yingwei unleashed his full power. These arcs of lightning that were enveloped inside the regulations of water were far too terrifying. If he held back, he might truly be killed at any moment. It had to be said that even though Miao Yingwei's battle prowess wasn't too impressive, he was still a monarch star, after all, so there were things that Ling Han could learn. Ling Han suppressed his power, lowering himself to a level equivalent to his opponent. Rather than crushing his opponent, this could maximize the results of his training. As such, the battle between them instantly became intense and evenly matched. Ling Han attained comprehension after comprehension. He started to fuse the azure wood chaotic lightning and divine fluid raging lightning together. All 5 elements possessing lightning was the true power of this secret technique. Borrowing this monarch star as a training dummy, Ling Han rapidly deepened his understanding and comprehension of this secret technique. How could Miao Yingwei not realize this? However, Ling Han's attacks were like a tsunami that surged toward him wave after wave, not giving Miao Yingwei any time to rest. Otherwise, the latter would immediately be killed. Miao Yingwei felt as stifled as could be. As a mighty monarch star from the world's paramount martial academy, and as someone who had the talent to become a paramount heavenly venerate in the future, he was actually being treated as a training dummy? How could he not be enraged? However, had he not brought this upon himself? Who in the world are you? Miao Yingwei roared in rage. Countless prodigies had converged to the world's paramount martial academy, so it was naturally difficult to guess his opponent's identity. You're only thinking of asking who I am now? Ling Han said in a cold voice. This person was clearly lusting after the Empress, so Ling Han had already sentenced him to death. As fellow disciples of the world's paramount martial academy, is there any need to take things so far? Miao Yingwei said. For him to utter such words, it was clear that he had already admitted defeat. However, how could Ling Han stop now? He replied in a calm voice, I'll suppress my cultivation to your level. If you can last 100 exchanges, I'll spare your life. You're underestimating me. Miao Yingwei replied in rage. He conceded that he was indeed inferior to Ling Han. However, failing to last 100 exchanges against someone at the same battle prowess? Just what kind of joke was this? Ling Han replied with a faint smile. He unleashed a palm strike, with his might instantly increasing several folds. He had already fused the azure wood chaotic lightning and divine fluid raging lightning together, forming the lightning of water and wood. With 3 regulations fused together, just how terrifying would this be? Miao Yingwei was instantly suppressed. Regardless of how prodigious he was, how could he possibly rival the techniques of a heavenly venerate? To say nothing of Miao Yingwei, perhaps even the successors of heavenly venerates would be unable to rival this. Why was this? Perhaps there was no concept of ranking among heavenly venerate techniques. However, not all heavenly venerate techniques were suitable for celestial kings to practice. For example, even the imperial void celestial king, a domineering ninth heaven celestial king, found it difficult to use the sealed emotion heavenly venerable's dragon-fish technique. That being the case, it would naturally be impossible for lower-level celestial kings to channel this technique. As such, even though the 9 transformations divine scroll and lightning of water and wood might not necessarily be top-notch heavenly venerable techniques, they were definitely supreme techniques among those at the celestial king tier. Miao Yingwei was extremely disheveled at this moment. Even with the same battle prowess, it was inevitable that he would fall into a disadvantage against the might of a heavenly venerate technique. Trying to suppress me within 100 exchanges? In your dreams, he shouted. Being at a disadvantage was one matter, and being defeated was another matter. He was confident that he could last 300 exchanges or even more. Is that so? Ling Han said with laughter. He started to channel the 9 transformations divine scroll. 2 heavenly venerate techniques. If he counted the indestructible heaven scroll as well, Ling Han now possessed a whopping 3 heavenly venerate techniques. Even though only the indestructible heaven scroll was complete, it was still a terrifying notion that a single person had grasped, and could channel, 3 heavenly venerate techniques. Miao Yingwei let out a muffled groan. With the 9 transformations divine scroll buffing Ling Han's attacks, it instantly elevated his battle prowess by 3 or 4-fold. This made him even more invincible. 100 exchanges would be extremely difficult to withstand. Miao Yingwei shed blood. With the help of 2 heavenly venerate techniques, Ling Han's battle prowess became far too terrifying. If this continued, he would die. He gritted his teeth before suddenly turning around to flee. Whoosh! Activating the regulations of space, Ling Han instantly appeared before him, blocking his path. Humph! You've already drawn on power that surpasses mine. Miao Yingwei chided. Otherwise, Ling Han couldn't have caught up to him. Ling Han smiled faintly, and replied, the condition was that you wouldn't flee. His condition had been a fair battle between the 2 parties. However, since Miao Yingwei had broken this agreement, Ling Han naturally didn't need to limit himself anymore. As a fellow disciple of the Martial Academy, is there any need for you to back me into a corner like this? Miao Yingwei said, changing his tune. Begging for life with such indignity. Do you not feel embarrassed? Ling Han retorted with a cold chuckle. He didn't hold back anymore, with his hands like deadly axes as he unleashed attack after attack. With him channeling two heavenly venerate techniques in unison, his might was profound and unstoppable. Miao Yingwei defended with all his might, yet how could he possibly rival Ling Han? Even fleeing was impossible, so it wasn't long before he was mercilessly killed. Ling Han felt no pity. If someone crossed his bottom line, they could only suffer a single fate death. As he looked at the Empress, his gaze instantly became gentle. Right now, the Empress had already drawn her divine sword. She was extremely relaxed as she faced heavenly tribulation, and it was clear that he didn't need to worry at all. The celestial kings were all stunned. As it turned out, Ling Han and Miao Yingwei were both outsiders who had come here to train. Their gazes instantly became menacing. As prisoners, they wholeheartedly detested those who came here to train. It was only because Ling Han was far too powerful that they could only suppress this feeling. However, once Ling Han left, they would immediately expose his identity as an outsider who had come here to train. They would call upon countless elites to hunt down and kill this detestable person. One day later, heavenly tribulation dissipated, and the Empress descended from the sky. There were 5 ribbons of iridescent light around her slender body, and she radiated with a powerful aura. Let's go. Ling Han didn't pay any heed to the surrounding people. He was inching closer and closer to the 6th heaven, so he was unafraid even if his identity were truly exposed. Chapter 26-27, Hunted. Ling Han and the Empress became increasingly interested in the ancient tomb. There was a heavenly venerate technique hidden in this place, and this was more so one that they could practice straight away. Thus, this had great significance. They ventured deeper and deeper, and news of 2 people being outsiders who had come here to train also started to spread like wildfire. Outsiders. Several days later, Ling Han and the Empress came across people who were hunting them. This was a group of 3 7th heaven celestial kings. Their expressions were baleful, and their eyes were filled with killing intent. They detested outsiders the most. These were people who treated them as stepping stones. Ling Han stood still, sweeping his gaze over them. He involuntarily smiled, and said, "Just you 3? That's nowhere near enough." Impudence, the 3 people roared as they attacked in unison. The Empress drew her sword. Swoosh! She was at the 5th heaven now, so combined with the might of her celestial tool, her battle prowess had already reached the peak stage of the 7th heaven. This slash was incredibly terrifying. The 3 7th heaven celestial kings were deeply astonished, hurriedly spreading apart to dodge this attack. They then launched a counterattack of their own. Spiritual attack. Wang. 3 bursts of devastating spiritual attacks surged over, causing the Empress to involuntarily humph. An expression of pain spread across her delicate face. The gulf in cultivation level between them was far too great, so this kind of spiritual attack was extremely effective against her. Miao Yingwei hadn't unleashed this secret technique before, and this was because he had only just entered the ancient tomb. As such, he hadn't been affected by the black energy yet, so he hadn't been able to master this secret technique. However, these 3 people were different. They had entered the ancient tomb long ago, so not only had they been affected by the black energy for a long time, but they had even killed numerous celestial kings and absorbed their black energy as well. This caused their spiritual attacks to become even more destructive. "You're nothing but a measly 5th heaven celestial king," the 3 celestial kings sneered. They pressed their advantage, aiming to defeat the Empress in a single breath. Their eyes were filled with greed and lust. This was because the Empress owned a celestial tool. However, the Empress remained unfazed as she continued to dance around, her sword stabbing and slashing like the falling rain. Borrowing the might of her celestial tool, her ferocity was such that the 3 seventh heaven celestial kings didn't dare to near her. Otherwise, if they got too close, they might be wounded by the celestial tool at any time. However, they simply needed to maintain a safe distance as they unleashed their spiritual attacks. This way, they could still suppress the Empress. Ling Han sighed, saying, 3 seventh heaven celestial kings attacking a 5th heaven celestial king. Have you people no shame? Brotherly, go and kill that brat, a 7th heaven celestial king in a purple robe said. Sure thing, the celestial king in black said with a nod. He turned around to charge at Ling Han. This man surnamed Li refused to believe that Ling Han was also this freakish, being able to rival 7th heaven celestial kings while at the 5th heaven. Meanwhile, the celestial king in purple and the celestial king in green continued to attack the Empress. They believed that she was the stronger of the two, and thus she deserved the attention of 2 of them. Immediately surrender and hand over your celestial tool. That way, we can spare your life, the celestial king in purple said. His eyes were gleaming with greed. Not only did he want the celestial tool, but he also wanted to obtain this stunning beauty. The Empress didn't reply, instead continuing to brandish her sword. She couldn't be bothered responding to these foul insects. You two seem to have forgotten about me, Ling Han said in a slow and calm voice. What? That brat still isn't dead? The celestial king in purple and the celestial king in green looked over in unison. However, they instantly gasped, even stopping their attacks. The celestial king in black had already collapsed to the ground, a gaping hole in his chest. Blood flowed from this wound, and his life force had already been extinguished. If this were in the outside world, heaven and earth would grieve the death of a celestial king. Thus, it would be as obvious as could be. Here, however, the death of celestial kings would be accompanied by no such honor. Their lives were as worthless as cats and dogs. Gasp. This is far too quick, no? A 7th heaven celestial king being defeated by a 5th heaven celestial king was already unfathomable. To be killed in such a short amount of time was even more inconceivable. That was a 7th heaven celestial king. If he were intent on fleeing, even newly advanced 9th heaven celestial kings would be unable to stop him. Just what kind of trump card had this brat used? If not for one, they couldn't accept this at all. Come, which of you wants to be my next opponent? We'll fight one-on-one to ensure some fairness, Ling Han said with a faint smile. The celestial king in purple stepped forward, immediately unleashing a spiritual attack as he did so. Only then did he say, I'll fight you. Wang. The spiritual attack arrived, and Ling Han couldn't help but frown. He felt like a needle had stabbed into his mind. This had happened numerous times already, yet there was still nothing that he could do about it. This kind of attack ignored distance, so it was almost impossible to defend. However, these attacks didn't affect Ling Han much, either. He had already mastered the Divine Sense Scroll of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll, so this amount of pain couldn't affect him. His mind was boundless and flawless. It's disrespectful to receive but not give. Here, eat my punch. Ling Han said as he charged forward, throwing a punch at the Celestial King in purple. The Celestial King in purple humphed as he replied with a punch of his own. He was unafraid as long as Ling Han didn't use his trump card. In his mind, Ling Han had definitely used some kind of rare 9th heaven treasure to kill the Celestial King in black. Otherwise, how could a measly 5th heaven Celestial King possibly be so powerful? Pang! Their fists collided, instantly releasing a shock wave that spread into the surroundings. After faltering for a brief moment, the fist of the Celestial King in purple instantly shattered. A magnificent force continued to surge forth, causing his arm to also explode, and sending bits of shredded flesh into the sky and exposing his white bones. Pa, 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 pa. Only when his entire arm exploded into pieces did the magnificent force finally subside. The entire right arm of the Celestial King in purple had already disappeared, with blood still spurting from his shoulder. The Celestial King in green was transfixed with terror upon seeing this. Fuck. This person had obliterated the arm of a seventh heaven Celestial King with a single punch. Just how devastating was his destructive ability? Why you? How can you possibly be so powerful? The Celestial King in purple stammered. He finally understood how the Celestial King in black had been killed so quickly. It wasn't that this person possessed a deadly weapon or whatnot. Instead, he was the deadly weapon. Cultivate earnestly in your next life, then you'll know, Ling Han said as he dashed forward and threw another punch. They were far too close, so it was impossible for the Celestial King in purple to dodge. He could only grit his teeth and throw a punch with his left hand. Pang! To no one's surprise, his left arm was also obliterated in an instant, turning him into an armless person. This wasn't a big deal for Celestial Kings. They all possessed flourishing vitality, so it was extremely easy to regrow broken limbs. The problem, however, was that the Celestial King in purple had no time to do so as Ling Han's third punch soared over. The Celestial King in purple raised his left leg to block. Pa! His left leg was also obliterated, transforming him into a one-legged person. He didn't dare to block any more attacks. Hopping on his single remaining leg, he immediately turned around to flee. Heavens! This fifth heaven Celestial King was far too terrifying. This wasn't someone he could kill. Ling Han shook his head, saying, "You still want to flee? It's already too late." If the Celestial King in purple had turned around to flee immediately after coming across Ling Han, it would have been extremely difficult for Ling Han to stop him even if he activated the regulations of space. Now that they were so close, however, it was truly a joke that the Celestial King in purple still thought that he could escape. Ling Han caught up to him in an instant, directly throwing a punch. Pooh! The Celestial King in purple violently vomited blood as he stumbled forward. Slowly looking down, he saw that a gaping, bloody hole had already appeared in his chest, with his heart completely obliterated. He then looked up at Ling Han, disbelief in his eyes. As a mighty seventh heaven elite, he was actually killed just like this? With this thought in mind, he crashed heavily to the ground, throwing up a cloud of dust. Chapter 26-28, Inheritance of Flames. The Celestial King in green trembled in terror. Those were two seventh heaven Celestial Kings. Regardless of whether it was the Celestial King Graveyard or the Flaming Frost Realm, these were still paramount and powerful beings. Yet, they had been completely powerless before Ling Han, killed as if they were mere ants. Ignoring the Empress, the man in green hurriedly turned around to flee. Humph. The Empress immediately activated her greatest eternity everlasting physique, affecting the flow of time. The speed of the Celestial King in green instantly fell by a dramatic amount. Physique of time, the Celestial King in green exclaimed in shock. He hurriedly shook his body and unleashed his full might, drawing on the power of seventh heaven regulations. His speed instantly returned to normal. This was the power of the Great Tao, impossible to infiltrate by any power. However, the Empress had already seized this opportunity to catch up to him. She slashed down with her sword, her attack like a roar that reverberated through the heavens. Move aside, the Celestial King in green bellowed as he hurriedly unleashed a spiritual attack. The Empress immediately faltered, and he seized this opportunity to flee. The Celestial King promised himself that he would never cross paths with this man and woman ever again. They were far too fucking freakish. Whoosh! All he saw was a blur as a person suddenly materialized before him. Ling Han. Gasp! How is he so quick? The regulations of space. It's definitely the regulations of space. Otherwise, how can his speed possibly be so terrifying? He was deeply astounded. Regardless of whether one was hunting someone else or fleeing from someone else, it was always most frightening to come across someone who had mastered the regulations of space. The fight isn't over, so why are you fleeing? Ling Han asked in a calm voice. However, he didn't attack. The Empress caught up, and immediately slashed with her sword. The Celestial King in green had no option but to block this attack. Otherwise, he would definitely be killed. If he fought, Ling Han would continue to spectate the battle. If he tried to flee, however, Ling Han would immediately dash over to block him. The Celestial King in green also understood that it would be impossible to flee. With this in mind, he decided that he had to defeat and then capture the Empress. He could then use her to threaten Ling Han. Otherwise, he would definitely be killed here. After making this decision, he immediately abandoned all thoughts of escape. He unleashed his full strength as he battled against the Empress. Even though he was a weak Celestial King, the fact that he had become a Celestial King was already proof enough of his talent. He threw punch after punch, with his battle prowess being extremely chaotic and violent. If it weren't for her celestial tool, the Empress would actually be no match for this Celestial King. After all, even though she was a supreme monarch star, there was still a gulf of two heavens between them. However, her celestial tool completely changed the situation, allowing her to gain the upper hand. The Celestial King in green was completely suppressed, unable to threaten the Empress. After 300 or so exchanges, the Empress unleashed another slash. Pooh! The Celestial King in green was immediately beheaded. Ling Han gazed into the distance, saying, "By the looks of it, our journey is going to become a difficult one." The three people had only been 7th Heaven Celestial Kings. If the couple came across 8th Heaven Celestial Kings, Ling Han would still be able to suppress them if they were only ordinary Celestial Kings. However, things would be much more difficult if they were Monarch tiers. If they were Monarch stars, then their strength would definitely surpass Ling Han's. Things would only be direr if they were Supreme Monarch stars. There are still at least 3 lands of inheritance, the Empress said. Ling Han nodded in agreement. After learning the 2 lightning techniques, he became increasingly interested in obtaining the remaining 3 lightning techniques. Only by fusing them together could he truly unleash the might of the Heavenly Venerate technique. They advanced with courage, overcoming several ambushes from 7th Heaven Celestial Kings. Right now, they were only being attacked by 7th Heaven Celestial Kings. This was most likely because the others thought that 7th Heaven Celestial Kings were powerful enough to suppress Ling Han and the Empress. However, after the pursuers were exterminated time and time again, the people in the Celestial King graveyard finally understood that 7th Heaven Celestial Kings were unable to kill Ling Han and the Empress. Thereupon, 8th Heaven Celestial Kings started to hunt the two. Meanwhile, Ling Han and the Empress arrived before a lofty mountain. This mountain was crimson, yet this wasn't because of its geology or its vegetation. Instead, this was because this mountain was an active volcano, with lava flowing down its sides and dyeing the entire mountain red. Arcs of crimson lightning flashed inside the lava, transforming into the shapes of all kinds of animals. There wasn't anyone blocked by this mountain, because it was possible to walk around it. However, Ling Han and the Empress didn't plan to walk around this mountain. They had already obtained 2 lightning secret techniques, so based on their analysis, it was extremely likely that a third was hidden here, the lightning of fire. Let's take a look. They entered the premises of the mountain. However, before they even neared the lava, they could already feel the waves of heat surging over, and turning their clothes charcoal black. The 2 of them naturally didn't want to wander around naked, so they immediately activated their source power, forming a shield of light around themselves. The circulation of regulations could repel the fearsome heat. However, this was only the beginning. The closer to the lava they got, the more terrifying the heat became. Eventually, they had no option but to walk in midair. They circled the lofty mountain once, yet they didn't make any discoveries. Perhaps this place doesn't contain any heavenly venerate technique? They couldn't help but converse, becoming skeptical of their initial analysis. Unless. The two of them exchanged a glance, saying, "The inheritance is inside the lava." "I'll go and take a look," Ling Han said to the Empress. His physique was freakishly powerful, and his defensive abilities were also far superior to the Empress. The Empress nodded as she sat down cross-legged. Ling Han had initially wanted the Empress to enter the celestial guest residence, but he immediately abandoned this thought after seeing this. With the Empress' strength, and with the might of her celestial tool, she would be able to flee even if she came across an eighth heaven celestial king. Ling Han descended from the sky, and directly entered the lava. A heat 100 times more terrifying than before instantly enveloped him, disintegrating his shield in a flash. TSSS. His clothes caught fire before instantly disintegrating and turning into dust. However, this was the only option. Symbols appeared on his body, emitting a golden glow. He was actively channeling the indestructible heaven scroll. With his current cultivation, even those with a battle prowess at the ninth heaven would need to attack him several times if they wanted to wound him. Moreover, following his rise in cultivation, he could also channel the indestructible heaven scroll for longer and longer. He wandered around the sea of flames, with his eyes gleaming with brilliance. Even the surrounding lava was unable to suppress this brilliance. Ling Han scoured the surroundings inch by inch. This lava contained the powerful regulations of flames, affecting his vision and not allowing him to see too far. Thus, he could only observe his immediate surroundings, which greatly reduced his speed. After an hour, he flew out of the lava. Firstly, he couldn't push himself until he was completely unable to channel the indestructible heaven scroll. Secondly, he needed to check in on the Empress. After all, they were the enemies of this entire realm. The Empress was peacefully seated, and after taking a single glance around, Ling Han also landed next to the Empress, recovering some of his source power. One day later, Ling Han entered the lava again. He had already recovered to his peak state. He could only explore a limited area each day, and he definitely couldn't leave before he finished exploring the entire mountain. 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had already passed. On this day, a smile quickly spread across Ling Han's face after he entered the lava. This was because he discovered that the ground here was different. There was a distinct vein, and it looked much like the meridian veins of a person. This vein appeared natural, as if it were merely a part of the mountain that had been formed in a slightly strange shape. However, Ling Han didn't think this. He saw what was hidden inside these veins. Indeed, this is the third land of inheritance, Ling Han said in his mind. He was slightly engrossed as he started to investigate this. If he failed to find the formation eye, he would eventually be assaulted by the boundless flames and lightning, something that even his physique wouldn't be able to withstand. Meanwhile, above the lava. Wang! A terrifying aura descended, after which a celestial king walked over from the sky. His body was surrounded by 8 ribbons of iridescent light. The Empress was instantly awakened with a start. She opened her beautiful eyes and looked over at the celestial king. "You're the outsider who's come here to train?" the 8th heaven celestial king asked. Even with his disposition, when he swept his gaze across the Empress, his heart couldn't help but flutter. However, he immediately suppressed this feeling. The Empress didn't respond. It had only ever been she who asked the questions. How could the opposite be allowed? She immediately drew her sword, pointing it at the 8th heaven celestial king. Chapter 26-29, An 8th heaven celestial king moves. A mere 5th heaven celestial king, quickly throw down your sword and surrender. That 8th heaven celestial king stood with his hands crossed behind his back, appearing very powerful and authoritative. He naturally had the right to do this. He was an 8th heaven celestial king, merely a single cultivation level away from the peak battle prowess of the celestial king graveyard. He naturally had the right to make demands, and could act domineering. The Empress couldn't be bothered to even respond. With celestial tool in hand, she wanted a battle. "I am Zhang Tianyan," that 8th heaven celestial king announced. "Seeing as how your natural talent is not too bad, I will give you a chance to survive. As long as you are willing to become my disciple, I can spare your life, and can teach you supreme techniques." He coveted the Empress's exquisite beauty. It was a lie that he was going to take her as a disciple, the truth was that he wanted to make her his mistress. The Empress shouted lightly, and took the initiative to attack. "You are biting off more than you can chew." Zhang Tianyan smirked coldly. He delivered a palm strike, and Wang, a frightening pressure assailed. Regulations took solid form, pressing down on the Empress. Pang! The Empress was instantly sent flying. Though she was very strong, she could not compare to Ling Han, so how could she match an 8th heaven opponent when she herself was only in the 5th heaven? Thankfully, the celestial tool sliced apart the regulations, so she was not too heavily injured. "Where's that brat?" Zhang Tianyan's gaze wandered. He feared that Ling Han would flee directly when he saw Zhang Tianyan move. If that happened, Ling Han really might be able to escape. The Empress gave no answer. She grabbed out with her left hand, and boundless water vapor and lightning were drawn towards her. Meanwhile, grass sprouted on the ground, trying its best to grow. Zhang Tianyan looked slightly surprised. Regulations of water, wood, and lightning were rapidly being drawn and fused in the Empress's hands. Ordinarily speaking, a 5th heaven celestial king definitely could not possibly gather so many regulations. This had reached the 7th heaven celestial king tier. Interesting. Zhang Tianyan's eyes slightly lit up. This little girl has actually grasped a secret technique, and it seems very extraordinary. He was greatly moved. He could obtain both the beauty and a secret technique. He was really coming back with full rewards this time. In comparison, even if he did not capture that man from before, it did not seem all that important now. In any case, other celestial kings would still move. "I'll have to see exactly how extraordinary this secret technique is," Zhang Tianyan thought to himself. As he thought this, the Empress had completely gathered the 3 kinds of regulations. Divine fluid raging lightning had fused with azure wood chaotic lightning, turning into lightning of water and wood. A greenish-black spear of lightning appeared, gripped in the Empress's hand. "This truly is very extraordinary. If I was the slightest bit careless, this attack could even rip through my defense." Zhang Tianyan mumbled, his eyes even brighter. The reason he had entered this place was so he could obtain the remaining 6 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll, yet now he discovered that the secret technique the Empress possessed was not the slightest bit inferior to it. This was a great profit. Crack! The Empress moved, throwing the lightning spear, which shot rapidly towards Zhang Tianyan. Zhang Tianyan was proud of his own strength, and naturally would not even bother to dodge. He stretched out a hand and grabbed the lightning spear. Great Tao wrapped around his hand, and practically no technique could touch him. Pa! However, he clearly overestimated his own strength, and also underestimated the might of this heavenly venerate technique. Though he had got hold of the lightning spear, the lightning was still wreaking havoc, and still caused his right hand to explode, blood seeping from the wounds. This could only be considered a minor injury, but the attack of a 5th heaven celestial king could actually make an 8th heaven celestial king bleed. By itself, this was an extremely rare event. Yet Zhang Tianyan was not furious, but rather delighted. The power of the lightning spear was too strong, but it also brought him a great pleasant surprise. If he could obtain this secret technique, Then could he use this to intimidate ninth heaven celestial kings? He laughed loudly, and he approached the Empress quickly with a flash. Since he had already witnessed the might of this secret technique, he had also lost his patience. Now he was going to capture the Empress, and gain both her and her secret technique for himself. It was true that the Empress was proud, but she was not stupid. Since an eighth heaven celestial king had unleashed his might, how could she possibly face him head-on? With a quick flash of her figure, she dodged. "You want to escape from me, you are truly dreaming." Zhang Tianyan laughed loudly. His large hand descended, and everything within 5 km of him had fallen under his control. Even regulations would have to submit to him. That was how domineering an eighth heaven celestial king could be. The Empress remained cold. The celestial tool in her hand slashed out, forcefully cutting out a path for herself. A celestial tool? Zhang Tianyan was taken back, and then laughed loudly. He was really overjoyed by now. This was not just 2 birds with 1 stone, but 3. He could actually gain a celestial tool as well with this move. Was this a supreme opportunity that the heavens had bestowed on him? Where are you running to? He moved once more, drawing on the regulations of heaven and earth, which turned into multiple pillars that surrounded the Empress. The Empress brandished the celestial tool to open a path for herself, while her left hand continued to use lightning of water and wood to deliver blasts at Zhang Tianyan, forcing him to slow down. Back and forth, Zhang Tianyan shockingly discovered that he actually was unable to do anything against the Empress. It was not that the Empress was heaven-defyingly powerful, but rather that the celestial tool she had in her hand could cut through anything and everything. Even the prison that he had formed from regulations was easily sliced through, and more importantly, he also had reservations in his offensive. He was not willing to harm the Empress. He wanted to capture for himself a complete, flawless beauty, and that was how the Empress managed to easily evade him every time. After several times, Zhang Tianyan had gradually lost his patience. In his eyes, the Empress was no longer a person, but rather a treasure chamber. He was determined to obtain her, and she was not to be shared with anyone else either. If he had to injure her, so be it. In any case, as long as the core of a celestial king was not injured, any injury could be quickly recovered. With these thoughts, the intensity of his attacks increased countless times over, causing the Empress to be seemingly in a difficult situation. It could not be helped. The gap in cultivation level was too wide. The fact that the Empress could hold on until now was already very, very impressive. If you do not want to suffer any longer, surrender quickly. Zhang Tianyan demanded coldly. For celestial kings like him, once they had steadied their resolve, their will definitely could not be shaken. No matter how pitiful the Empress looked, it was not enough to soften his heart. The Empress still stayed silent. What worth did this damn bug have to make her speak? Stubborn. Zhang Tianyan humphed, and slashed out his palms towards the Empress like they were 2 axes. Even if he was wary of the might of the celestial tool, and dared not approach too close, with the attack that was driven by the cultivation level of an 8th heaven celestial king, every palm strike would be heavy as a mountain, smashing forcefully through regulations, and also made it extremely difficult for the Empress herself to draw on any regulations. This was the strength of a high-level celestial king. With their superior cultivation level, they could directly empty out all regulations in the area, and lower-level celestial kings would not be able to draw on regulations. They would be forcefully suppressed to the severing mundane tier. The Empress could only use the celestial tool to attack him. It was not affected by Zhang Tianyan, and could destroy anything in this world. Just sit down obediently. Zhang Tianyan laughed loudly. He had already grasped the upper hand completely. Pressing down a single palm, he wanted to crumble all of the Empress's battle prowess. But when he lowered his palm, he discovered that he had actually become exceedingly slow. Regulations of time? He was surprised. Faced with his great power, the Empress should not have been able to draw on any kind of regulations at all, so where had these regulations of time come from then? Moreover, being able to use regulations of time when she herself was not yet ninth heaven, just how heaven-defying was the good luck of this pretty little girl? Xiao. The Empress took advantage of the opening to slice out of the siege and once again escape. She had used the greatest eternity everlasting physique. Her own physique naturally could not possibly be sealed by Zhang Tianyan. Otherwise, that would mean that she had already fallen into his hands. I don't believe this. How could it be that I can't capture a little fifth heaven celestial king like you? Zhang Tianyan was also truly angered now. He, a great eighth heaven celestial king, had moved, and actually had not been able to capture his prey after such a long time. Oh, is that right? Ling Han's cold voice rang out. Chapter 2630, Intense Battle. Ling Han studied the veins in the lava for a while, and after he discovered he was close to his limits in maintaining the channeling of the indestructible heaven scroll, he flew out, and then witnessed how Zhang Tianyan was presently hunting down the Empress. This naturally filled him with extreme fury. He immediately flashed out, and attacked Zhang Tianyan. Zhang Tianyan was slightly startled. He had not thought that the brat would actually be hiding inside the lava. This lava pool was very frightening. The regulations of lightning and fire were flowing within, and even a ninth heaven celestial king would not deliberately run in. There were no benefits to be gained, so it would simply be a waste of their own power. What did you, a mere fifth heaven, run in there for? I will beat you till you burst. Without saying anything else, Ling Han directly charged over, his hands clenched into fists, with regulations wrapped around them. He burst out with his full power, having regulations wrapped around his fists, and activating his body art as well. He also had two heavenly venerate techniques which boundlessly boosted his battle prowess. This naturally made his attack incredibly violent. As he threw a punch, it was as if he was a true dragon in human form, exuding an incomparably formidable and terrifying aura. At first, Zhang Tianyan had considered Ling Han below his notice. The latter was only a mere fifth heaven celestial king, and did not have a celestial tool either. What need was there for Zhang Tianyan to take Ling Han seriously? But when Ling Han attacked, Zhang Tianyan was immediately stunned. This battle prowess was strong enough to compare to the middle stage of the eighth heaven celestial king tier. This was really crazy. Without any external factors, a fifth heaven celestial king was actually capable of unleashing battle prowess of a middle stage of the eighth heaven celestial king. Was he going to defy the heavens? Going by that accounting, once this brat reached sixth heaven, wouldn't he then be able to stand at the pinnacle of the celestial king tier, and stand equal to a ninth heaven celestial king? This couple was really too extraordinary. No wonder they dared to train here. They probably had a heavenly venerate backing them, right? However, this was the celestial king graveyard. A heavenly venerate would definitely not set foot here. This was a common agreement that all the heavenly venerates had agreed upon. Even if Zhang Tianyan killed Ling Han, he would have nothing to fear. There would definitely be no heavenly venerate that would enter this place to hunt him down. Do you think I am afraid of you? Zhang Tianyan smirked coldly. He was a late-stage eighth heaven celestial king. Though it was only slightly stronger than Ling Han, that was already enough. He also charged towards Ling Han, his hands slashing downwards. He was like a true dragon, like a terrifying beast from the primitive age. Ling Han laughed loudly, meeting the attack with both fists ready. Pung! 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 The two great elites clashed. After the exchange of every single punch, shock waves would reverberate, and it was as if even the heavens would be collapsing at any moment. After exchanging over a dozen blows in a single stroke, Zhang Tianyan couldn't help but feel shocked. As expected, he indeed had the upper hand in terms of power, but Ling Han's physique was too frightening. Though the latter would be sent sliding backwards with every exchange, the vitality in his body was still burning brightly, without any sign of chaos at all. If this was another person, even if it was really a middle-stage 8th heaven celestial king, their vitality would definitely be stirred up in this kind of exchange, their battle prowess deteriorating. In fact, it was not impossible that they would even be directly sent flopping onto the ground from the impact. For Ling Han, who was clearly at a disadvantage, but still had no loss to his battle prowess, this was too inconceivable. How could there be someone like this? Ling Han seethed with fury, raining down punches. Damn old geezer, you actually dare hurt my wife. I am going to beat you into mush. Zhang Tianyan felt depressed. He had not wanted to hurt the Empress. He only wanted to capture her. Furthermore, a 5th heaven celestial king actually declared that he was going to beat him till he burst. How could he endure such humiliation? Brat, you are too arrogant. He was the first to change his tactic. With a shake of his right hand, a small golden tower appeared in his hand. The moment it appeared, it began spinning, and floated into the air above his head. The golden tower cascaded down precious qi. It could be seen that every streak of qi was extremely heavy, suppressing even regulations. This was not a celestial tool, but the materials used to forge it were also extraordinary. Furthermore, Zhang Tianyan had used his cultivation level of the 8th heaven to temper it constantly, so its might was truly no trivial thing. It could be claimed that not only was it not weaker than himself, it was even that slight bit stronger at that. Die. Against Ling Han, Zhang Tianyan did not have the slightest bit of reservations. Ling Han had been a target that he wanted to kill in the first place. He threw a punch, and as his power combined with the precious qi of the golden tower, the might was greatly magnified. Ling Han roared loudly, and still responded with a fist. Pang! This time, Ling Han was far from being a match for his opponent. He was sent flying with a single punch, and cracks rang out from all the bones of his body. If it were not for the fact that his physique was extremely strong, a great many of his bones would probably have broken from this one blow. You can't even withstand a single blow. Zhang Tianyan sneered. He was completely unconcerned that he had already drawn his precious tool, while Ling Han was still fighting with bare fists. A loss was a loss, and a victory was a victory. Anything else was just mere excuses. With a loud battle cry, he took the chance to follow up on his attack. Ling Han wiped the corner of his mouth. He knew that the gap in cultivation level was ultimately too wide. When he was using his bare fists, he would also only be able to match an 8th heaven celestial king that was unarmed. Once the latter drew his precious tool, and he was still in the same circumstances, his disadvantage would be too great. Old geezer, you are asking for your own suffering? Ling Han drew the divine demon sword. Cold light flashed, and it was as if a 9th heaven celestial king had appeared, exuding a harsh air of dominance over all. After devouring an adequate amount of divine metal, even if the divine demon sword had not reached the heavenly venerable tier, it still far surpassed the level of divine metal. At least it could already compare to a 9th heaven celestial king in terms of intimidation. Zhang Tianyan was stunned. This was yet another celestial tool. Fuck, how lavish. He was an 8th heaven celestial king, but he had only ever seen celestial tools himself even now, but this couple were only in the 5th heaven, yet both of them had a celestial tool in hand. In comparison, he, an 8th heaven celestial king, was really too poor. People who had come from outside were indeed different. They had a heavenly venerate backing them, and even celestial tools were things that they could easily gain. I will kill you. Ling Han wielded the sword and moved, slashing madly at Zhang Tianyan. You think you are capable? Zhang Tianyan almost died of fury. It should be known that he had come to kill these two outsiders who had come here to train. He drew on the precious chi of the golden tower, and threw a punch. The force of the attack turned into a golden battle wolf that pounced towards Ling Han. He was wary about the might of the celestial tool, and did not dare to battle in close quarters. Pooh! Ling Han's sword swept out, and that golden battle wolf was instantly slashed in half. Faced with the terrifying destructive power of the divine demon sword, it was impossible that the golden battle wolf would have any chance to attack again. It was directly destroyed. Zhang Tianyan was astounded. It was not that he had never exchanged blows with a celestial tool before, but while the celestial tool in the Empress's hands was still powerful, it had not had might like this. Ling Han attacked aggressively. With a wave of his left hand, the lightning of water and wood was unleashed, turning into a spear of lightning that was smashed towards Zhang Tianyan. Ling Han had long since channeled the 9 transformations divine scroll. Though it had not reached the greatest boosting effect, with 3 parts fused into one, this might was already considerably great. The lightning spear shot out fiercely, and the divine sword danced. He had completely taken the initiative in this battle. Zhang Tianyan was helpless. His world-shaking strength was useless here as he did not dare to fight a power battle against Ling Han. Even if he was an 8th heaven celestial king, definitely nothing good would happen if he tried a power battle with a celestial tool. Just think, a great 8th heaven celestial king was actually being suppressed by a 5th heaven celestial king. This was very inconceivable, yet it was truly and genuinely playing out now. Damn it! Damn it! Zhang Tianyan cursed. He had completely not foreseen this before he made his move. This couple's strength was really too great, especially in the case of Ling Han. He was so strong that it went beyond logic. You actually dare to use a tower-shaped precious tool. That is even more of a reason that I cannot spare you. Ling Han's eyes swept over the golden tower above Zhang Tianyan's head, his killing intent blazing even hotter. Though the Black Tower had already been snatched by Heavenborn, Ling Han was still heavily influenced by it. What he hated the most were tower-shaped precious tools. Zhang Tianyan felt like he didn't know what to say here. Fuck, have I caused you any trouble just by forging my precious tool in the shape of a tower? Chapter 2631, The greater the wounds, the stronger he becomes. I'll beat you up. Ling Han's right hand wielded his sword, but his left hand changed gestures frequently. At times it would be a palm strike, at times he would clench his hand into a fist, and sometimes he would send out a spear of lightning with a wave. Change was only a matter of thought for him. He had already walked out his own path. His cultivation was no longer limited by form, but would change as he willed it. Yet Zhang Tianyan felt horrible. Ling Han's attacks seemed completely chaotic and disorganized, yet were extraordinarily powerful. It looked like Zhang Tianyan had the upper hand in power, but when they actually fought, he fell into a disadvantage, which was something he couldn't understand. However, he was still an 8th heaven celestial king, after all. Looking at how Ling Han's calm face was enshrouded in precious chi, as if a god was about to walk out of him, he couldn't help but exclaim, "You have walked out your own path." He knew very well that if one wanted to become a heavenly venerate, the most basic, as well as the most important step, was to walk out one's own path. Every single heavenly venerate was unique and special. Even if Lin Luo had 3 heavenly venerate disciples, they had all taken that last step on their own. Their master only helped to guide them, but could not make it so that their descendants would follow in their footsteps every bit of the way. In this instant, Zhang Tianyan was extremely jealous. Though walking out one's own path did not mean that one would definitely become a heavenly venerate, if the most crucial step had already been taken, the largest barrier for breaking through to the heavenly venerable tier was already swept out of the way. This kind of person actually came into the Celestial King graveyard? You are courting your own death. Zhang Tianyan declared coldly. His jealousy was ignited, making him want nothing more than to immediately kill Ling Han. You coming here is just an act of suicide, and you even wounded my wife. Even tearing you into pieces is not enough to vent my fury. Ling Han shouted loudly. He drew his sword, boundless light illuminating the surroundings. He was keeping nothing back anymore, unleashing his battle prowess to the maximum limits. Zhang Tianyan did not believe that Ling Han could maintain his battle prowess at this height constantly, or that would be too illogical. Hence, he did not take even half a step back, his every move being a forceful clash with Ling Han. He wanted to blast Ling Han out of this state as soon as possible. By then, he would get Ling Han's head, and then capture the Empress. His rewards would be astonishing. Great opportunities naturally came with great danger. Now, the greatest opportunity was laid out right in front of Zhang Tianyan, so wasn't it very normal that there would be danger as well? Wang, he used his trump card. Spiritual attack. This was too despicable. Even if Ling Han had long since prepared himself, it was useless. He felt a pain in his head, and he had already been hit by the spiritual attack. I have to admit that you are indeed very strong, and also incomparably freakish, but you are too naive, after all. The fact that your cultivation level is too low is a weakness that you cannot change. Zhang Tianyan took the chance to charge over. With how bountiful his battle experience was, he would attack madly once he got the slightest opportunity, and kill his opponent in a single stroke. Ling Han smirked, and suddenly sliced out with his sword. What? Zhang Tianyan paled in great shock. As he thought about it, even if Ling Han's spirit was not wounded upon being affected by his spiritual attack, Ling Han would be frozen for about half a breath's time at least. This was enough time for Zhang Tianyan to annihilate his opponent. This strike was far beyond his expectations. He wanted to dodge this strike hurriedly with a tap of his foot, but it was already too late. Pooh! Blood sprayed out. Zhang Tianyan rapidly retreated 300 meters. He looked at the empty place where his left arm should be. It had been severed from the shoulder down, and there was blood gushing out. Good. Good. Good, he forced out through clenched teeth. He had not thought that he, the hunter, would actually fall into the trap of his prey, and be deceived by his own experience. I said I would kill you. Ling Han leaped out, delivering another strike with his sword. He was indeed still affected by the spiritual attack, but it could only cause him a slight sting now. It was like how his physical body would hurt after being cut, but he was absolutely capable of tolerating this pain with strong willpower. Zhang Tianyan released another spiritual attack, while his hands balled into fists, and delivered countless blows as well. Ling Han felt a storm raging in his mind. It was incredibly painful to sustain spiritual attacks, but the more that was the case, the wilder his fighting spirit would be. He slashed madly at Zhang Tianyan as he pursued the latter, determined to kill his opponent. Yet Zhang Tianyan did not have such a strong fighting spirit. While he could cause considerable damage to Ling Han with the spiritual attack, Ling Han was also coming close to him. Even if the divine demon sword did not strike Zhang Tianyan directly, the sharp sword qi was still enough to cause him great trouble. More importantly, Zhang Tianyan's left arm had already been directly severed by the divine demon sword. Endless murderous aura had also surged into his body through this injury, and was now wreaking havoc with wild abandon. How could the might of a celestial tool be underestimated, what more when the divine demon sword far surpassed an ordinary celestial tool in power? It was true that Zhang Tianyan was an eighth heaven celestial king, but it was still impossible for him to bear the destructive power of the divine demon sword. If Zhang Tianyan had the time to sit down and recover from his injuries, he would still be able to expel the murderous aura of the divine demon sword from his body bit by bit, but with Ling Han detaining him now, how could he possibly have the time? This was using his own injuries to trade for injuries on his opponent. Ling Han threw his mind on the line, letting it come under continuous attacks. Blood was already flowing out of all his apertures, but his own assault did not stop. His fighting spirit overwhelmed the heavens, and also caused massive trouble for Zhang Tianyan. Sword Qi danced wildly, causing Zhang Tianyan to be heavily injured as well. Their injuries were different, but their severity was more or less the same. It would have to depend on who would be the first to fall. Zhang Tianyan soon revealed his intent to retreat. He feared that even if he did kill Ling Han, his own injuries would be too heavy, and he would die right alongside Ling Han. Zhang Tianyan was greedy, but as someone who had reached the height of 8th heaven, he naturally could control his own greed. Gritting his teeth, he turned and fled. There was absolutely no way he alone could take Ling Han down, what more when the Empress's battle prowess was not to be underestimated as well. Zhang Tianyan would leave, and find someone to help him. Then, he would return to suppress these two people. In any case, there were two celestial tools, which was enough to share. Have I allowed you to leave? How could Ling Han possibly allow Zhang Tianyan to flee? Regulations of space were unleashed, and space instantly manifested into layers, as if it was a swamp. If I want to leave, how will you stop me? Zhang Tianyan laughed madly. If an 8th heaven celestial king was determined to flee, it would be very difficult for even a 9th heaven celestial king to stop him, what more when it was just a mere 5th heaven celestial king that was chasing him. Not only will I stop you, I will kill you. Ling Han used regulations of space on himself, traversing the layers of space, and setting off in hot pursuit of Zhang Tianyan. Zhang Tianyan used regulations to boost himself. He stood at the height of 8th heaven. Merely in terms of regulations, he would naturally overwhelm Ling Han. Pang! 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 Zhang Tianyan aggressively barged through the spatial barrier, his speed practically unaffected. But practically did not mean completely. Ling Han's speed was already astonishing in the first place. Once Zhang Tianyan was only slightly delayed, Ling Han immediately caught up with him, and swept out with the indestructible divine demon sword. Damn it! Zhang Tianyan had no choice. He could only turn around, and continue exchanging blows with Ling Han. It was still trading injury for injury. The injuries of the two of them also became more and more serious. One was injured from the inside out, and the other was injured from the outside in. Now that things had reached this point, it was actually a contest of willpower now. Whoever had the stronger willpower would be the last one standing. Pang! A punch landed on Ling Han, and Zhang Tianyan was also blasted by the lightning of water and wood. Both of them were throwing up blood endlessly. However, in the next instant, the two of them began a new exchange of blows. Pang! 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 The two of them bled endlessly, their injuries becoming gradually heavier. Zhang Tianyan discovered that his fighting spirit was becoming weaker and weaker, but on the other side, not only did Ling Han's battle prowess not weaken in the slightest, it was even increasing. This caused great shock to Zhang Tianyan. This kind of guy that would become stronger as his injuries became heavier was really too hard to deal with, especially in a situation when they were equally matched. The more you fought, the weaker you became, but your opponent would become stronger as the battle progressed. It was like cheating. How could you continue fighting then? I said I would kill you. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared directly into the clouds. His martial intent surged, and could not be stopped. Chapter 2632, 3 Lightning Technique. After fighting intensely for 3 days, Zhang Tianyan died. He had died a very meaningless death. Even if he had encountered the strongest 8th heaven celestial king and had been outmatched, he would have been able to leave calmly. However, faced with Ling Han, he did not even have the chance to escape. He was forced to trade injury for injury, to the point that he died. Ling Han also flopped onto the ground. His injuries in this battle were also very heavy. Previously, he had been battling on a single breath, and now that Zhang Tianyan was dead, he could not hold himself up any longer either. The Empress hurriedly delivered Ling Han into the celestial guest residence. It was augmented with the heaven-deceiving technique, and even if it was a ninth heaven celestial king that was carefully searching for it, he wouldn't necessarily discover its presence. Furthermore, even if it was discovered, it was forged from divine metal. Breaking into the celestial guest residence was not an easy task. Ling Han recuperated from his injuries calmly. He had a premonition that he had profited greatly from this great battle. After his injuries were recovered, whether it was battle prowess or cultivation level, they would both increase to a greater level. Time passed day after day, and new 8th heaven celestial kings arrived. They discovered the signs of battle that were left behind, but they did not discover the presence of the celestial guest residence. They came and left soon after. A whole 3 years later, Ling Han had finally recovered from his injuries completely. Not bad, I am close to reaching the late stage of the 5th heaven. This kind of battle that forces out my potential completely is indeed the fastest method to improve my cultivation level, Ling Han murmured. Wife, let's go. We should go and retrieve the third mystical power, Ling Han said to the Empress. The Empress nodded. The both of them stepped out of the celestial guest residence. As for bewitching Maiden Ro, she continued to stay inside. There was no way for her to enter into the lava. Tong! The couple leaped into the lava. They had both spread out a protective layer of source power. If it was an extremely short amount of time, the source power shield would still be able to hold up. They arrived at the spot where ley lines converged, and studied it carefully. The Empress's defense was inferior to Ling Han's, and she had to come out of the lava once in a short while. Only when she recovered to her prime condition would she enter once more. Ling Han also shared his gains with the Empress. In this way, after about 3 years, they had finally confirmed all the details of the ley lines, and found the formation eye that was hidden within. Down! They dived further, but they had no plans on leaving immediately this time. They sat down where the formation eye was, and began to guide the power of the whole volcano so it would surge into their bodies. Boom! Fire and lightning wove together, surging madly towards them. However, this time, this power did not hurt them. Instead, it circulated inside their bodies, turning into their own power. Crimson flame windy lightning. They had obtained the third secret technique. Extremely bright seals of great Tao flashed in their mind. Boom! The whole volcano was erupting. Lava gushed out, and crimson lightning dazzled the eyes. Some passed by, and discovered the unusual phenomena. However, they thought that this was a natural event. No matter how hard they thought, they could never have imagined that there were 2 people that were hiding here. Close to another 3,000 years passed like that. The lava of the volcano was no longer flowing. The lightning had also stopped because the power of regulation inside had already been exhausted. The crimson lava had coagulated and solidified, becoming red rocks, but they were still giving off steam. Pang! The rocks broke apart, and 2 human figures rushed out of them at practically the same time. It was Ling Han and the Empress. Ha ha ha! Ling Han turned and flopped onto the ground. He stretched out his right hand. Boom! Green, red, and black light blazed at the same time before fusing. Then, a streak of lightning intertwined, turning into a small sword, and then took the form of a saber, spear, and so on. Change happened as he willed it. Not only had Ling Han grasped the crimson flame windy lightning, he had fused the 3 secret techniques together, and their might was even stronger now. Before I obtain all the lightning of the 5 elements, this will be called the 3 lightning technique. I have already advanced to the middle stage of the 5th heaven. The Empress smiled. For celestial kings like them, there was nothing more pleasing than an increase in their cultivation level. Ling Han nodded. I am also just a step away from the peak stage. He was overjoyed as well. Once he advanced into the 6th heaven, he would be able to match a 9th heaven celestial king. That last battle against Zhang Tianyan was already so difficult, and this man only had the aptitude of an emperor tier. If it had been a monarch tier, even if I had had the aid of the divine demon sword, I still might not have been able to kill him. Previously, I had been too self-satisfied. However, even if I encounter a peak stage 8th heaven celestial king now, there is nothing for me to be afraid of. I am still short of 2 types of secret techniques. Both Ling Han and the Empress were filled with anticipation. After fusing the 3 secret techniques, they were even more aware of how strong this heavenly venerate technique was, and wanted even more to grasp the remaining 2 secret techniques to form the most complete, flawless heavenly venerate technique. The 2 of them advanced hand in hand. Though there was great danger within this ancient tomb, they were already unafraid. Their battle prowess was close to reaching the 9th heaven, so they indeed had that kind of confidence. Several days later, they arrived in front of a small lake. From afar, before they had even come close, they could already smell a refreshing fragrance. Celestial medicine. The 2 of them exchanged a look, and exclaimed at the same time. However, it was not just they who had discovered that there was a celestial medicine here. The lake was surrounded by people who were 6th heaven celestial kings, at least, as they shone with streaks of peculiar light around them. Come, let's go and take a look. They strode forwards. Mere 5th heaven celestial kings actually dare to come here? A celestial king discovered the 2 of them, and involuntarily smirked coldly, looking extremely disdainful. However, the gaze he directed at the Empress was filled with a bit of heat. Do not underestimate them. It is impossible for ordinary 5th heaven celestial kings to come here. Their battle prowess has to reach the 6th heaven at least, someone beside him remarked. In other words, monarch stars. The person from before immediately became serious. There were pitifully few monarch tiers, and monarch stars were even rarer. Even in the flaming frost realm that had gathered the prodigies of countless dimensions, there was definitely still a limited number of monarch stars. This kind of prodigy would be qualified to become a heavenly venerate. Thus, unless they had committed an act that was wicked beyond redemption, it was impossible that they would be imprisoned in the Celestial King graveyard. Their number really could be counted on the fingers of 2 hands. If one is not a ferocious dragon, better not cross the river one. We had best not stand out, everyone said. No one was willing to be the first to become an idiot to challenge Ling Han and the Empress. What if their strength was heaven-defyingly powerful? Ling Han and the Empress soared, standing in midair. In this way, their vision would not be obstructed. They could clearly see that there was a green duckweed growing in the center of the lake. Its leaves were as large as basins, and it had borne a pale golden fruit at this time. The fruit's fragrance wafted, spreading throughout the nearest 500 kilometers. This is greenish-black flowing ripple fruit. Ling Han looked stunned. Judging by how the fruit looks, it is already close to ripening. That could possibly happen any time in the next few years. The Empress looked towards him, and he nodded. It is celestial medicine of the highest grade. You and I can share it between us, and it would be enough to push us both to the 6th heaven. Then we must pluck it, the Empress said. A celestial king dressed in green couldn't help but say, I say, the 2 of you are really speaking such big words. He looked to be an old man in his 60s, his skin tightly wrinkled. He did not look like a 6th heaven celestial king at all. Do the 2 of you know just how many elites are fighting over this celestial fruit? Lord Fu Jiming, Lord Zui Yuan, Lord He An E. Ling Han was taken aback. He wasn't that Gu Hai then? They were here? Ha, this was really traveling far and wide to look for you, only to find you easily. Where is he? Ling Han asked. Naturally, he will only appear once the celestial fruit has ripened. By then, all the lords would begin a battle of the strongest, and only the victor will obtain the celestial fruit, that celestial king in green replied. As for us, we can only absorb some of the fragrance of the celestial fruit at that time, and who knows, there may be a chance that it would loosen the barrier to our cultivation levels. As for other delusions, there is no need to even think about it. Chapter 2633, Pei Shenghai. Ling Han did not say anything else. Gu He would not be appearing for the moment, so Ling Han would just have to wait. Once the celestial fruit ripened, Gu He would definitely appear, and it would be fine to kill him then. Ling Han and the Empress sat down on the banks of the lake, absorbing the fruity fragrance. There was a sliver of energy from the heaven and earth contained within. It was extremely beneficial even for celestial kings. No wonder a great many people were still seated around here even when they had full knowledge that they were not qualified to contend for the celestial fruit. The majority of celestial kings were affected by the black qi, all of them having hot tempers, and would fight over the slightest issue. Battles happened practically every day. Some battles would only cause severe injuries, while some would only end when one side died completely. The strongest people here were 23 peak stage 7th heaven celestial kings. They all had the aptitude of monarch tiers, and had battle prowess close to the 8th heaven celestial king tier. Thus, they had always been domineering, and held no reservations in their actions. At present, Ling Han only had two matters on his mind. The first was to wait for Gu He to appear, and the second was to pluck the celestial fruit. He was unconcerned about all else. Hence, he did not cause trouble, and merely waited patiently beside the Empress. However, while they would not cause trouble, it did not mean that others would not trifle with them either, especially when the two of them were both only 5th heaven celestial kings, and the Empress was extraordinarily beautiful. This was practically a treasure that was completely unguarded. It was too tempting to others. After Ling Han showed his might and killed 9 6th heaven celestial kings in a row, finally no one dared to trifle with them any longer. This brat seems quite extraordinary. Ling Han's performance also drew the attention of those peak stage 7th heaven monarch tiers as they all turned their eyes on him. Little 7, go, have that brat come to greet me, a peak stage 7th heaven monarch tier declared. Understood. Ling Han sat with his head slightly raised, looking towards the celestial king that was approaching them. After he established his authority, no one dared to approach within 30 meters of him by now, yet this celestial king was just boldly walking towards the couple. Was he asking for a beating? Sir, my lord summons you, this celestial king said. He was a 6th heaven celestial king. Ling Han was nonchalant, and instead asked, who is your lord? Pei Shenghai, Lord Pei, that 6th heaven celestial king declared proudly. Pei Shenghai was a monarch tier whose battle prowess was close to the 8th heaven celestial king tier. Even in this place, he could be ranked among elites. Ling Han shook his head. I don't know this random person. You, that 6th heaven celestial king was instantly outraged. Ling Han actually dared say that Pei Shenghai was just some random person? The 6th heaven celestial king forcefully suppressed his anger, and said, if Lord Pei is just some random person, what are you then? Ling Han's eyes flashed with coldness. He was just sitting here, what trouble had he caused? Yet not only did the other party come uninvited, he was actually saying such big words. From the very moment he opened his mouth, it was a demand that Ling Han go to greet someone. What right did he have to expect a pleasant reception from Ling Han? You are seeking death. Ling Han said coldly. Raising his hand, he pressed down on the opponent. You dare, that 6th heaven celestial king called out harshly, yet did not dare to even counter. He hurriedly broke into a run and fled. He had seen Ling Han fight before. Ling Han's battle prowess was too frightening. How could he possibly dare to face him head-on? But if he had managed to flee, would Ling Han have been able to kill an 8th heaven celestial king? Pang! The palm strike descended, and that 6th heaven celestial king was smacked into a bloody mush. When the people around saw this, they all inhaled sharply. This guy was really too harsh, killing at the slightest provocation. The other guy had just asked him to pay his greetings to Pei Shenghai. Who was Pei Shenghai? A peak stage 7th heaven monarch tier, who definitely was qualified to put on such airs. You actually killed his subordinate at the slightest disagreement. This is a deep offense to Pei Shenghai. As they saw it, Ling Han was dead. Previously, the reason why he could be so arrogant and domineering was because those 7th heaven celestial kings had not made a move on him. What more peak stage 7th heaven monarch tiers? Furthermore, Pei Shenghai is a close follower of Lord He. Someone revealed an even greater piece of information. What, Lord He? Everyone was trembling. Though He was also a 7th heaven celestial king, his battle prowess could be comparable to peak stage 8th heaven. Otherwise, he would not be qualified to contend for the celestial fruit. No wonder. So Pei Shenghai is one of the guards that Lord He has left here to watch over the celestial fruit. Lord He is really too extraordinary. He himself is only a 7th heaven celestial king as well, yet can make a 7th heaven celestial king monarch tier follow him willingly. In the future, he will definitely be able to reign over a city, and become an overlord in his own right. Even I wish to follow Lord He and ride on his coattails, but he doesn't even bother himself with me at all. Amidst a round of discussions, Pei Shenghai slowly stood, and then strode over to Ling Han, his expression icy cold. A puny 5th heaven celestial king actually dared not to give him face? Humph! He was not walking very fast, but with each step, a frightening aura reverberated like a sharp sword pointed straight at Ling Han. Ling Han actually dared to kill his subordinate right in front of him and in full public. Pei Shenghai was naturally enraged. He swore that he would definitely make Ling Han feel extreme regret for his insolence. How dare you? You actually dare to kill my subordinate? Pei Shenghai exclaimed coldly, his voice rumbling out like thunder, and causing the ears of the people around them to ring. Only an absolute blank left in their minds. This caused everyone great shock. This was the strength of a peak stage 7th heaven monarch tier. It was truly strength that could not be imagined. Ling Han was calm and indifferent, and replied, "Your subordinate provoked me, so I killed him. If you wish to follow in his footsteps, you can just come over then. I am not the type to like causing trouble, but if anyone causes trouble for me, just wait, and you will be crying soon." How dare you? Pei Shenghai shouted furiously. Wang, his voice turned into a wave that swept towards Ling Han like a tsunami. Xiao. Ling Han's figure flashed and pierced apart the sound wave like a sharp sword, rushing towards Pei Shenghai. You indeed have some strength. No wonder you dare to be so arrogant. Pei Shenghai smirked coldly. He raised a hand, and pressed it down on Ling Han. But in front of me, this is far from enough. Ling Han suddenly sped up. Pang! Even a celestial king could not glimpse his movements. Everyone could only see a blur in their vision, and Ling Han had already appeared in front of Pei Shenghai. He raised his right fist, and suddenly smashed it downwards. Pei Shenghai humphed lightly, stunned by how fast Ling Han was. However, he did not panic. Impressive speed did not mean that his battle prowess would also be strong. Pang! Ling Han's fist crashed down. Pei Shenghai raised his arm to parry. Great Tao entwined around his arm, as if there was a layer of divine light from an indestructible guardian deity protecting him. He was extremely confident in himself. Even an ordinary 8th heaven celestial king could not destroy his defense with a single strike, what more when it was only a puny 5th heaven celestial king. Pa! The fist landed, and that layer of divine light was practically like it didn't exist as it immediately shattered, and before Pei Shenghai's expression even changed, the power of the punch exploded, and his right arm was instantly broken. Flesh split apart, bones broke, and blood sprayed out. And this was not all of it. An unstoppable force surged out, and Pei Shenghai collapsed onto the ground. Pang! It created a loud boom as his whole person sank into the ground. This attack was earth-shattering. A 5th heaven celestial king actually defeated a peak stage 7th heaven monarch tier? This is too unbelievable. How could there be a monster like this? They are a couple, and have such incredible power. Could it be? Could it be? They are the outsiders who have come here to train. Everyone looked towards Ling Han and the Empress. There was shock in their expressions, as well as fear, but more than that, there was abhorrence. Ling Han was unconcerned, and merely seemed slightly surprised. You are actually still alive? Chapter 2634, Giving No Face. Pang! A figure shot out of the ground, standing proudly in midair. A blood-red aura was bubbling from all over his body, as if he was a great demonic god that was about to begin a massacre, and kill every single being in this world. It was Pei Shenghai. Ling Han seemed slightly surprised. With a blow from him, a peak stage 7th heaven king tier, even if he was a monarch tier, actually hadn't been killed? I have really underestimated you. Pei Shenghai's voice rumbled out like thunder. Cold light shot from his eyes. Seals of great Tao were visibly flickering. His killing intent blazed as his fury reached extreme levels. That's what I thought. How could Pei Shenghai possibly be insta-killed? When the people in the area saw this, they all nodded. This was the kind of supreme monarch tier that they had imagined. Pei Shenghai must have been underestimating his opponent too much. His strength is definitely not as low as this. Meanwhile, Ling Han stared at Pei Shenghai for a while, and gave an "oh." He said, "The body defense technique you cultivate is indeed extraordinary, allowing you to escape this calamity." When one had reached a height that Ling Han had, he naturally knew very well how much force he needed to use in his attacks. He would definitely not waste the slightest excess bit, but he had not expected that Pei Shenghai would have cultivated a very strong body defense technique, and that was why he had not succeeded fully. Pooh! As if in response, Pei Shenghai immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. He had luckily escaped death, but it did not mean that he did not need to sacrifice anything for it. Seeing this scene, the people in the area were instantly extremely shocked. Correct. Ling Han had not killed Pei Shenghai with a single blow, but a single blow was enough to make the other party throw up blood. Was this not enough to express how strong he was? Heavens, his battle prowess would have to be at the 8th heaven at least, right? Even if it is the early stage of the 8th heaven, he has breached the gap of 3 cultivation levels. A 5th heaven, yet he possesses the battle prowess of the 8th heaven. I'm about to go crazy. Everyone was grabbing their head as they exclaimed in shock. They could not believe this. They knew that there were indeed freaks in this world, but this was really too freakish to a point that they could not accept. Pei Shenghai threw up blood like mad, but his vitality was actually soaring. His eyes shone with divine light, his fighting spirit blazing as he pointed a finger at Ling Han. You have successfully angered me, and death is the only path for you now. Ling Han laughed. Have you come to amuse me? Die. Pei Shenghai charged out. This time, he was no longer careless, a silver spear appearing in his hands. Shwa! His speed was astonishing, and in a flash of silvery light, he instantly rushed right in front of Ling Han in the next moment. In this blow, Pei Shenghai had brought with him the great power of the heaven and earth. It was as if the heaven and earth were working together to suppress Ling Han. Monarch tears were monarch tears after all, so how could his strength be underestimated? And just when the silver spear was about to pierce its target, a spiritual attack was sent out towards Ling Han as well. Wang! Ling Han suddenly felt pain in his mind, as if his head was about to explode. Death Spear! Pei Shenghai roared out, pouring all his power into the spear, and stabbing out at Ling Han. Under the spiritual attack, even if Ling Han's mind did not explode, he would definitely still be affected, which would cause his reaction speed to slow down. And in a battle of this level, a slight delay of one's reaction would become fatal. Die. Pei Shenghai smirked coldly. His eyes were weeping tears of blood, and his expression was extremely twisted. But in the next instant, the smile on his face suddenly turned into shock. That was because Ling Han moved calmly, and easily grabbed this spear. It really was just a short distance away, and the tip of the spear halted at Ling Han's throat. Pei Shenghai pushed forwards with all his might, but the spear seemed like it was rooted, and was completely motionless. How could this be? You clearly have not released any spiritual attack, so how could you not be affected? Pei Shenghai exclaimed in shock. Indeed, he could not believe this. Spiritual attacks could cancel each other out, but Ling Han had clearly not sent out any spiritual attack, so how could he be completely unaffected? Ling Han smiled slightly. Who said I was not affected? He had still been pained, but now that his tolerance had greatly increased, and with his incredibly strong willpower, he only experienced pain for a short while. His battle prowess would not be reduced because of this. This was called being affected? Pei Shenghai was speechless, but when he saw that Ling Han's other hand had already balled into a fist that was about to fly towards him, his heart turned cold. He hurriedly loosened his grip, and he did his best to retreat as much as possible while exerting force through his feet. This opponent was too frightening, absolutely not someone Pei Shenghai could stand against. Now that you have attacked me, you still wish to retreat completely unscathed? Ling Han shook his head, his steps light. He seemed completely unhurried, but he was sticking closely to Pei Shenghai's tail. He had just not thrown a punch yet. Pei Shenghai's face had turned completely pale. What kind of monster was this? His power, speed, and spirit had all surpassed the level of fifth heaven, and even overwhelmed him completely. Yet Ling Han did not move all this while, and Pei Shenghai finally relaxed. He should be holding reservations because of Lord He, right? True, what kind of being is He? A peak stage 7th heaven supreme monarch star whose evolution index has even soared to 12. Who would not be afraid of this kind of character? Lord He only needs to take one more step, and he will be able to do as he likes in the Celestial King graveyard. If he becomes a 9th heaven celestial king, he will definitely become an absolutely invincible existence. Looks like you know what's good for you. Lord He. Pooh. Pei Shenghai was just about to say a few words to keep up appearances, yet had not anticipated that Ling Han would suddenly deliver a punch, crushing his head directly. His mind was instantly destroyed, so it was natural that he was completely dead. A series of sharp inhaling rang out in the area. This guy was really decisive and resolute. Pei Shenghai had already revealed his backer, but Ling Han had still moved without hesitation, not giving face to even He. He is an absolutely extraordinary character. This guy is indeed extraordinary, but a 5th heaven actually wants to match a peak stage 7th heaven supreme monarch star? No matter what, that cannot be possible. That's right. Even if this guy's evolution index has reached 12, there is no way to compensate for the gap of 2 cultivation levels. He'll just be waiting for Lord He's fury to tear him into pieces. Everyone was not optimistic about Ling Han, and shook their head. Even those peak stage 7th heaven elites did not step out and say anything. In any case, once he was here, Ling Han would simply become a dead body. But how could they have known that not only had Ling Han's evolution index reached 12, he had also obtained an invincible body art? This was the true basis for his confidence. Ling Han returned to his original spot and sat down, waiting patiently for the celestial fruit to ripen. He was determined to obtain this celestial fruit. He only needed 1/5, or even 1/10, and he would have the confidence to attempt breaking through to the 6th heaven, and after he crossed this threshold, it would be no issue for him to match a 9th heaven celestial king when he channeled both his body art and power of regulation at the same time. He should only need 5 years, at most, or so he secretly estimated. Even Pei Shenghai had practically been insta-killed, so it was naturally impossible that there would be anyone else that would go and provoke Ling Han again or covet the Empress. Even if they did, they could only keep their thoughts to themselves. Time passed quietly, and Gu Hui did not appear. It seemed like he would not appear before the celestial fruit ripened. Ling Han was unconcerned as well. At present, his only priority was the celestial fruit. He only had to ascend to the 6th heaven, and no matter who his opponent was, he would be able to suppress them. And in this manner, 4 years passed. On this day, the fragrance emanating from the celestial fruit became extremely strong, causing everyone's pores to expand and dilate, and making them feel as if they were floating on air. A supremely valuable celestial fruit, a supreme great herb. Ha ha ha. Following a loud laugh, a figure in green streaked forwards from the distance. At first, he was still a boundless distance away, but in the blink of an eye, he instantly appeared at the side of the lake. Everyone was filled with reverence because this old man in green was enshrouded in 8 ribbons of iridescent light. The celestial fruit was close to ripening, and the powerful figures had finally appeared. Chapter 2635, Deliberately Come to Kill You. I, Fu Yunhai, will accept this greenish-black flowing ripple fruit. The celestial king in green laughed loudly, directly stretching out his hand to snatch the celestial fruit from the center of the lake. Brother Fu, you are too greedy. A voice rang out, but a golden light had already shot over, heading towards Fu Yunhai. Boom! This large hand was immediately ripped apart, but the golden light was erased as well. Nyozangyu? Fu Yunhai asked coldly, looking in a specific direction. Xiao. With a flash of golden light, another 8th heaven celestial king appeared. He was only 3 feet tall, and was a dwarf, but no one dared to underestimate him. His vitality was bubbling like multiple furious dragons. It was probable that any of these dragons was capable of casually suppressing any 6th heaven celestial king. This dwarf was Nyozangyu. He cast an eye on the surroundings, and then cackled. Jiaoyu, Shuechengbai, Rongwenlin, He, what are you all cowering for? Could it be that you people want to sit on the sidelines and take advantage of us? As his words fell, 3 figures immediately shot over. They were all 8th heaven celestial kings, and their aura was shocking. They were all 8th heaven celestial kings, only a single step away from the pinnacle of the celestial king tier. But the last person was slowly walking here from the horizon. His hands were crossed behind his back. Every step was extremely elegant, but no matter how one looked at it, he exuded the air of a show-off. 7 ribbons of iridescent light wrapped around him, proving that he was only a 7th heaven celestial king, yet he was capable of standing equal to 8th heaven celestial kings, so he was indeed qualified to show off. No, Gu He. Ling Han's eyes narrowed. He stood up. Gu Hui, Xiaoxiong, and Miao Hua were the 3 people that he wanted to kill the most at present. Since we are all gathered now, let us decide whom the greenish-black flowing ripple fruit belongs to now, Nyozangyu said. Since there are 6 of us, each of us will claim a 6th. How about it? No. Gu Hui shook his head. I want half. You. Niao Tsangyu and the others all glared. This guy was demanding half from the get-go. Then didn't that mean that they could only each claim a tenth? You have all reached the peak stage of the 8th heaven. A tenth of the celestial fruit would be enough to help you to break through to the 9th heaven, Gu Hui stated calmly. He was the one at peak stage 7th heaven. To say nothing of only one greenish-black flowing ripple fruit, even if there were 10, he would not be complaining that there were too many. Humph, what if we fail on our first attempt? Jiao Yu asked coldly. Then I want half myself. You? You're not worthy. Gu Hui glanced at him, and then treated him with complete disdain. How dare you? Jiao Yu glared furiously at Gu Hui. What about it? Do you want to die? Gu Hui scoffed. We all know that you are very strong and freakish, but there are 5 peak stage 8th heaven celestial kings here. Niao Tsangyu said, his gaze flashing. It was unknown what he was thinking about. Gu Hui laughed loudly. For trash like you, even if 3 of you join forces, you would still not be a match for me. But there are 5 of us. Xue Chengbai replied, but it was a tacit admission of how strong Gu Hui was. Gu Hui did not speak, but rather drew a sword directly. Immediately, its cold light dazzled the heavens, so blinding it was a blur. Celestial tool. The expressions of Niao Tsangyu and the others immediately became bitter. Merely Gu Hui alone was capable of matching 3 peak stage 8th heaven celestial kings, and if there was a celestial tool thrown into the equation, he would not lose even if it was just him against 5 of them. Fine. You win. If you want half, then half it is. Niao Tsangyu and the others all conceded. If it really came down to a battle, perhaps they could win, but it would definitely be a narrow victory. Furthermore, if they were struck by the celestial tool, they could not bear to imagine the consequences. Gu Hui was calm and nonchalant. Though he had forced 5 great 8th heaven celestial kings to submit to his will, he did not show a sliver of conceit. That was because this could not be any more normal in his eyes. He was a man that would become a heavenly venerate in the future, so what was the simple matter of forcing several 8th heaven celestial kings to submit worth? As expected of Lord He. He is truly mighty. Himself being a 7th heaven celestial king, he can manage to force 5 great 8th heaven celestial kings to submit to him. This is definitely something that would be known for generations. Everyone was extremely excited. Their blood bubbled hotly at this scene, each person looking at Gu Hui like an idol. The 6 great 8th heaven celestial kings all descended towards the center of the lake. Since the decision was made, it was now time for retrieval. Shua. Right at this moment, a sword light swept past, so brilliant and blinding that everyone couldn't help but close their eyes. However, they immediately snapped open their eyes in fear. This was sword light. Wasn't closing their eyes just committing suicide? Sword light swept past, yet Gu Hui and company were forced to rise. They did not dare to continue descending on the center of the lake. A man with sword in hand stood on the banks of the lake, his black robes fluttering, as dashingly elegant as a deity. It was none other than Ling Han. Has this guy gone mad? Lord He has not called him out for an accounting yet he actually dares to step out of his own volition. Furthermore, he has attacked 6 great elites all at the same time. Does he think that he is Lord He? Everyone felt this was unbelievable. They could no longer understand this world. The 6 great elites all turned to look at Ling Han at the same time, and when they saw that Ling Han was only a 5th heaven celestial king, they all looked surprised. This was too much of an exaggeration, wasn't it? Had he developed the courage of an immortal dragon? Yet Gu Hui laughed loudly. So it is you. I have deliberately come here to kill you. Ling Han stated indifferently. Should I call you Zhang San or Li Si? Gu Hui asked, unconcerned. Though Ling Han was more freakish than the former was, the latter had been scrambling around like a rat under the hot pursuit of Gu Hui, Xiaoxiong, and the other guy. How could Gu Hui take him to heart now? My name is Ling Han. Ling Han answered. Heh, no matter what your name is, since I have seen you, you are dying without a doubt today. Gu Hui's expression was completely disdainful, but when he said the last few words, he revealed an intense killing intent. This man was more freakish than Gu Hui was, so he had to be hiding a great secret. Gu Hui would kill him and take this secret for himself. However, I do not have the time to deal with you now, so just wait here for now. Gu Hui stretched out his hand and grabbed, and the heaven and earth manifested. He actually manifested a human figure. He then instilled a sliver of his divine sense within, and that figure made of regulations immediately filled up and became realistic. The human figure charged towards Ling Han. Boom! It was emitting an incredibly strong aura, and even an ordinary seventh heaven celestial king would feel fear at seeing it. Heavens, Lord He is actually as strong as this. Simply drawing on regulations casually, inserting a sliver of his spirit, and it would possess battle prowess that could overwhelm a seventh heaven. The greatest prodigy. The greatest prodigy. Everyone was numb with shock. Even Miao and company were extremely wary. This young man was really too frightening. If he broke through to the eighth heaven, then the five of them added together wouldn't even be a match for him single-handedly, right? Sigh, why had that young man called Ling Han sought his own death? The strength of the two of them was not even on the same level, and now Gu Hui had to retrieve the celestial fruit first. Once he was free, eliminating Ling Han would only be a thought for him. Shua, a sword light swept out, and that figure of regulations was already slashed in two. Swaying and trembling, it wanted to put itself back together again, but with the rush of destructive power, it immediately turned into countless pieces. An existence that was capable of suppressing a seventh heaven celestial king had actually been eliminated with a single strike? Heavens! Everyone was grabbing their head, exclaiming in shock. They were completely incapable of believing their own eyes. Ling Han sheathed his sword, and stated evenly, I already said it, I have deliberately come to kill you. Chapter 2636, Fighting for the Celestial Fruit. Previously, Gu Hui had come slowly, and everyone thought that he was a show-off. However, compared with Ling Han now, his showiness was practically nothing. Everyone looked at Ling Han, their eyes filled with confusion and respect. Of course, there was also contempt. After all, most people had already guessed that Ling Han and the Empress were both outsiders who had come here to train. How could a fifth heaven celestial king be as strong as this? Gu Hui also showed a hint of seriousness. Though that figure of regulations had only been something he had formed casually, it genuinely had the battle prowess of the peak stage of the seventh heaven, yet Ling Han destroyed it with a single strike. But he immediately looked disdainful. You are just depending on the might of your celestial tool. Miao and the other great eighth heaven celestial kings did not speak. Exchanging a look, they communicated secretly with their gazes. Once the two started fighting, the rest would snatch the celestial fruit. In that way, every single one of them could claim a fifth, which was double the amount that had previously been agreed upon. Ling Han walked forwards, rising into the air with every step, and standing level with the six great elites. Previously, even if everyone knew that he was very freakish, they would definitely not think that he could stand equal to Gu Hui, Miao and the other elites, but nobody thought that way any longer now. This was the seventh big shot. Are you determined to seek death now? Gu Hui asked coldly. He was too displeased. The celestial fruit was right in front of his eyes, and obtaining it would send him right into the eighth heaven. For other celestial kings, this celestial fruit would only increase their cultivation level, at most, but would not be of much help in opening the great doors to the next cultivation level. However, it was different for him. He was a supreme monarch star, and the barrier to the next cultivation level could be claimed to be non-existent for him. I am just going to kill you. Ling Han's eyes were cold. If he asked himself honestly, he had never offended Gu Hui and company, but they had pursued him all the way into the Celestial King graveyard. Did they really think that he was an easy target to bully? Shameless boasting. Gu Hui retorted coldly, and suddenly threw a punch right at Ling Han. Wang! Regulations condensed, turning into a giant hand in green that descended from the skies, smacking down on Ling Han. Ling Han's left hand balled into a fist, and fired at the skies. Pang! Space trembled, and that giant green hand was instantly shattered. Not so impressive, Ling Han said. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but feel excited. Ling Han was indeed not inferior to Gu Hui. Heavens, that was only a mere fifth heaven celestial king. This was mad, this was absolutely mad. This had completely broken the iron rules of cultivation. A fifth heaven celestial king actually possessed battle prowess at the eighth heaven, no, at the peak stage of the eighth heaven celestial king tier. Couldn't he let others live? Letting you live for a few more days was truly a mistake. Gu Hui charged out. Previously, Ling Han had not been a match for him, and could only be severely injured when they clashed, fleeing in a panic. But Gu Hui had not found and killed Ling Han, which allowed the latter to break through to the fifth heaven, and gain the ability to pose a threat to the former. Could it be that I have to thank you all for your kindness then? Ling Han scoffed. If it were not for the fact that he had a strong willpower and extraordinary strength, he would have long since been killed by Gu Hui and the company. It won't be too late to kill you now, either. Gu Hui charged over, his divine sword already drawn without hesitation. He did not dare to underestimate Ling Han in the slightest. I'll return these words to you, shameless boasting, and I will add another few words, in your dreams. Ling Han also approached with the divine demon sword in hand. Ding! The two celestial tools clashed, and boundless ripples of murderous aura swept out with a boom, surging in all directions. Even eighth heaven celestial kings would be wary of this, and they all dodged. Ding, ding, ding. Pang, pang, pang. Two great elites, prodigies, freaks were exchanging blows endlessly, putting their strength on full display. They are, actually equal. Everyone was stunned. Previously, Gu Hui had used bloodshed to prove his strength, and won the status of an elite, and now Ling Han was doing the same. He was using Gu Hui as a stepping stone, and becoming famous with a single battle. No, no, no. At present, it is only a contest of standard battle prowess. Neither of them have used any ultimate moves, so it is not definite who is stronger yet. I think it should be Lord He. After all, he has the advantage of cultivation level. I think it should be that Ling Han, since he dares to take the initiative to issue a challenge. How could he possibly have dared to step out if he had not had absolute confidence? I support Lord He. I support Ling Han. The two great prodigies were fighting madly, and the 5 eighth heaven celestial kings were all smirking coldly. Their eyes turned on that greenish-black flowing ripple fruit that was below them. This was the time. They all moved, descending onto the surface of the lake. They wanted to snatch the celestial fruit. Shwa! Shwa! Two streaks of sword chi descended from the skies, slicing down towards them. These two flashes of sword chi had not been both delivered by the same person, but their might was chilling, and Niu Tsangyu and the others had no choice but to dodge. Otherwise, it was possible that even they would be killed. That was because the attacks had been delivered by celestial tools. Ling Han, Gu Hui. It was one matter for them to be fighting, but how could they possibly allow others to take advantage of their preoccupation? Thus, the moment Niu Tsangyu and the others moved, the duo moved without any prior agreement, assaulting the 5 great 8th heaven celestial kings. Damn it! Niu Tsangyu and the others were all cursing lowly. These 2 juniors were really too harsh. They were fighting, yet they were actually still guarding against them. Never mind. That's right. Since we have already offended them, what else should we be concerned about? The 5 of them pounced towards the celestial fruit. If they could use the celestial fruit to advance to the 9th heaven, then whether it was He or Ling Han, they could suppress the 2 of them with one hand behind their backs. Ling Han roared, throwing off Gu Hei, and bulldozed forwards with sword in hand. In comparison, it was definitely the greenish-black flowing ripple fruit that was more important. There was only one celestial fruit, and it would be gone if it fell into the hands of another. Gu Hei, though, could be killed at a later time. Gu Hei had the same idea. Brandishing his divine sword, he pounced directly towards the celestial fruit. He would take the celestial fruit first, and then kill Ling Han. In your dreams. Ling Han sneered coldly. Hi's sword swept out, directing a strike at Gu Hei. Die. Instantly, the whole area was in complete chaos. 7 great elites were all fighting one another at one moment, and they would be dashing towards the celestial fruit in the next, but that would then result in being ganged up on by the other 6 elites. It was fine if they did not make a move towards the celestial fruit, whoever did would become the public enemy. Both Ling Han and Gu Hei had extraordinary strength, but in a situation when everyone else was their enemy, there was definitely no way that they could hold up while being ganged up on by 5 great 8th heaven elites. It was that case for them, what more for Niu Tsangyu and the others. The 7 of them were fighting an extremely intense battle, but it was a stalemate. None of them could become the first to break through. Wang, Wang, Wang. Multiple spiritual attacks were also being used. Everyone wanted to send the others into a dizzy state, and use that opportunity to pluck the celestial fruit, but 6 out of the 7 of them had grasped this kind of powerful move. It was definitely not anyone that could suppress all those around him. Fight, fight, fight. Fighting until even the skies darkened, fighting till ghosts wailed and gods howled. The spectators were not even worthy of watching the battle among 7th heaven celestial kings at close quarters. They had no choice but to retreat further and further. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time was passing by slowly, and the battle among the 7 great elites still did not have a result. Ling Han was fuming. He had no wish to just continue the battle endlessly like this. Releasing a battle cry, he channeled the indestructible heaven scroll. Multiple golden seals appeared on his body, pushing his defense level to an unbelievable level. Die. Ling Han rushed towards the celestial fruit, and this instantly attracted the fury of the 6 great elites. They all rained a mad barrage of attacks on him. Too bad, Ling Han was practically indestructible at this moment. He could withstand even a few blows from a 9th heaven celestial king. Pang, pang, pang. Countless attacks exploded on him, but Ling Han's speed became even faster in his charge. He stretched out a hand and grabbed at the celestial fruit. Chapter 2637, Big Trouble. You dare, the 6 including Gu Hei all shouted. Their attacks came on like a tsunami, with spiritual attacks being launched in waves. Ling Han groaned. The indestructible heaven scroll was focused more on protecting his physical body, while protection of the spirit was weaker, so he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood as he stumbled. But his eyes glittered with a firm resolve, and he grabbed the celestial fruit without flinching. Die. Gu Hei slashed out with his sword, and Shua, sword chi moved unhindered in all directions. It was terrifying indeed. This was a celestial tool. Pooh, blood spurted from Ling Han's back, but he still couldn't be stopped in his tracks. With a move of his left hand, he seized the celestial fruit. Ah! All the 6 powerful elites became furious immediately. This was a treasure that they were determined to obtain, and which they have been waiting for a long time. Ling Han had thoroughly ignited their anger. Boom! The attacks came out one after another, all targeting Ling Han. Originally, Ling Han had been able to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll for about an hour, but under the combined attacks of so many elites, the seals on his body had begun to flicker. Fortunately, he finally didn't have to keep on withstanding the attacks. He activated the regulations of space, and he was already by the Empress' side in one step. He reached out and grabbed her before sending her into the celestial guest residence. He further threw in the celestial fruit, and sent a message via divine sense to the Empress. Then, he laughed out loud and turned around, facing the 6 powerful elites who were boiling with anger. "Hand over the celestial fruit, then I can spare you," Miao said. "I only need 1/10, as long as that is handed over to me, I can leave here immediately." Jiao Yu relented slightly. "I also need only 1/10, then I will leave immediately," Rong Wenlin said. One by one, the 6 powerful elites expressed their stand except for Gu Hei. Everyone only wanted 1/10 of the celestial fruit. This was the same as their previous agreement with Gu Hei, and was also the bottom line which they could accept. As for how Ling Han and Gu Hei distributed the remainder of the celestial fruit among themselves, it would be none of their business. You guys are thinking too much," Ling Han said lightly. "If you get out of here now, I can still spare all of you. Otherwise, don't bother about leaving, your life will end here." What a lunatic. Utterly insane. Attack together. The 6 powerful elites were all provoked, each launching powerful attacks, and aiming them at Ling Han. Ling Han mainly focused on dodging the attacks. The divine demon sword was invincible, and defended incomparably tenaciously under the siege of the powerful elites. Had it not been that the spiritual attacks were overwhelmingly terrifying, Ling Han could even have defended without sustaining any injury. It was impossible to run away. The 6 powerful elites had already encircled him and utilized their great abilities to restrict the surrounding space. It might have been impossible for one person to do it, but under the joint efforts of the 6 powerful elites, it wasn't difficult to do so. Besides, Ling Han didn't plan to escape. Fight, fight, fight. Ling Han slashed with the divine demon sword in his right hand, while his left hand used the 3 lightning technique, aided by the 9 transformations divine scroll. The power of his attacks was extremely violent. In terms of defense, the indestructible heaven scroll was a force to be reckoned with, helping him out of danger time and time again. One person battled against the 6 powerful elites. Everyone was stunned. They had already looked very highly upon Ling Han, but then they had come to the realization that they had still underestimated this person was unreasonably heaven-defying indeed. "He can't hold on for long, there's bound to be mistakes, and that will be his death," Gu Hei said coldly, his resolve firm and unshakable. Agreed. The other 5 including Miao agreed with him, and stepped up their attacks. 1 day, 10 days, and then 1 month had passed, and the battle was still ongoing. They were all truly infuriated by now, determined to kill Ling Han. Ling Han's body was riddled with injuries. After all, he was going against 6 people with battle prowess of the 8th heaven. Coupled with such terrifying spiritual attacks, it was already extraordinary to be able to withstand them, so how could he not be injured? But Ling Han was getting stronger and stronger despite his wounds. Accompanied by his battle cry, his fighting spirit was strong like iron, and his counterattacks were fierce. The divine demon sword swirled with brilliant radiance, unleashing sword chi all around. 3 months, and then half a year passed. Ling Han paused for a moment, and suddenly began trying to break out of the encirclement aggressively. "Don't even think about it," the 6 powerful elites sneered. They had confined the space. If Ling Han wanted to break free, he would need at least 10 breaths time, which was enough time for them to catch up and kill him. Ling Han swiped out with a hand, and a beautiful figure with a strong and unstable aura emanating from her body emerged. It was the Empress. As soon as she waved her hand, Ling Han immediately flew towards her. His body shrank rapidly before he completely disappeared. He entered the celestial guest residence. "Damn it," the 6 powerful elites roared. "Call him out, or else die." They were all extremely resolute, even Gu Hui, who also expressed his admiration for the Empress. Ling Han had to die, otherwise there would be endless troubles. The Empress couldn't even be bothered to give them any regard, and didn't bother to answer at all. "Take her down." The 6 powerful elites all wanted to make a move as they couldn't give Ling Han a chance to heal. This kind of person was too terrifying. Once he was allowed to recover, his battle prowess might even reach a greater level than before. The Empress smiled, so elegant and gorgeous that heaven and earth paled in comparison. However, dark clouds rolled out, and a terrifying oppressive might materialized. Heavenly tribulation. It was the coming of heavenly tribulation. The Empress had already refined a portion of the greenish-black flowing ripple fruit in the celestial guest residence, which made her cultivation level progress greatly. With the time acceleration effects, she had reached the peak stage of the 5th heaven, and was the first to be qualified to charge towards the 6th heaven. With the appearance of heavenly tribulation, who would still dare to take action? Interfering with other people's tribulation was one of the great disrespects to heaven and earth, and entailed extremely serious consequences. The 6 powerful celestial kings stopped at the same time. If they made another move, they would be bringing calamity upon themselves. Gu Hui's gaze flickered. He was a supreme monarch star. In a certain sense, he wasn't afraid of heavenly tribulation. However, the Empress was the object of his admiration. If it wasn't absolutely necessary, he really didn't want to meet her in battle. But after hesitating for a moment, he strengthened his resolve. Ling Han had probably gone to refine the celestial fruit, and if he started to charge towards the 6th heaven, then it would be all over for them. Under this premise, so what if it was the Empress? Die! Gu Hui brandished his sword. Even if the heavenly tribulation were to strike, he still attacked the Empress. "How dare you!" The Empress snorted coldly. Her arms waved, and 2 divine swords appeared in her hands at the same time. Ling Han had given her the divine demon sword when he entered the celestial guest residence. Gu Hui couldn't help but be startled. 2 celestial tools. Everyone was also stunned. 2 celestial tools. Shua, the Empress did not hesitate for a bit, slashing with both swords, and sword chi shot upwards into the sky. The combination of 2 divine swords was too extraordinary. In addition, the Empress was about to break through to the 6th heaven. Her own battle prowess was comparable to the late stage or even the peak stage of the 7th heaven, and she was capable enough to deliver 8th heaven level power with a celestial tool. If it was just Gu Hui alone, the Empress could block him. Gu Hui roared. Perhaps Ling Han might have already refined the celestial fruit at this time. Although he could still refine Ling Han himself to extract the essence, this would be a terrible feeling as he was not a man-eating demon, after all. He had to suppress the Empress as soon as possible, pull out Ling Han, and kill him. Otherwise, with every bit of time that passed, Ling Han would have refined an additional bit of essence of the celestial fruit. The Empress wasn't fearful at all. Although Gu Hui's battle prowess was higher than hers, he would have to go through a tribulation of the 7th heaven celestial king tier, so how much energy could he spare to attack her? At least within this day, she could still hold her ground steadily. However, when the heavenly tribulation dissipated, the 5 powerful elites of 8th heaven would join the siege, and it would be really troublesome by then. Chapter 2638, A Desperate Battle. The Empress was battling Gu Hui, but she wasn't at any disadvantage at all. Certainly, with the heavenly tribulation, which was the absolute main force of the offensive, added in, it caused the two prodigies to split and move in different directions, dodging constantly. Celestial Maiden Wan Xing, why are you obsessed with that kid? Gu Hui said. Seeing that he could not win against the Empress, he changed his strategy, and attempted to break up the two. He is not worthy of you at all. Her Majesty didn't say a word, but responded by slashing her dual swords at greater speed. I will love you 100 times more than that brat. Gu Hui said. Disgusting, the Empress reprimanded coldly. Gu Hui took a deep breath, and no longer had any delusions about the Empress. Even if he wanted to possess the Empress, he would directly suppress her with brute force and seize her body. You forced me to do this, he muttered, and the celestial tool in his hand slashed forward with boundless radiance. 10 Demon Soul Capturing Sword. He released a great attack with the sword blazing brilliantly, and slashing through the air, a soul-draining and fatal strike. Wang, a spiritual attack was launched at the same time, charging towards the Empress. The Empress was in great danger. It went without saying that a heavenly tribulation was a terrifying entity, and she was being attacked aggressively by a supreme monarch star who was at the peak of 7th heaven with a powerful attack at the same time, which naturally put a lot of pressure on her. This was a disadvantage of several cultivation levels, it was just too wide a gap. The Empress was fighting and retreating at the same time. Currently, the heavenly tribulation was wreaking havoc, and thus the blockade previously laid out by the 6 powerful elites was nothing more than an empty shell. In a sense, this had transcended regulations. Gu Hui kept pressing on closely as he didn't have much time left. If he couldn't suppress the Empress soon enough, then when he dragged Ling Han out, the other party would have almost completely refined the celestial fruit. He wanted to break through to the 8th heaven. He designedly had to do so as soon as possible, for only then would he be capable of contending with 9th heaven celestial kings. Gu Hui's attacks were getting more and more aggressive, but the Empress was defending just as tenaciously. Most importantly, he could only utilize part of his power for attacking, or the heavenly tribulation would unmistakably strike him, not bothering one bit if he was a monarch star or whatever else. The Empress defended tenaciously. Soon, a day had passed, and the heavenly tribulation had dissipated. The group of 5 including Fu Yunhai simultaneously attacked the Empress. These were actually people with battle prowess at the 8th heaven. Even if the Empress had broken through to the 6th heaven, and was aided by 2 celestial tools, she was still not their match. She was immediately beaten to the point of vomiting blood. The Empress couldn't even hold her ground for 10 strikes. She had no choice but to retreat into the celestial guest residence. Otherwise, she would be seeking death. This was too obvious, so the 6 powerful elites were all eyeing the celestial guest residence at the same time. It might be boosted with the heaven-deceiving technique, but that was useless at this point in time. Spatial God tool? Xue Chengbai said disdainfully, sending a punch towards it. Wang, divine metal shone brightly, sending out a terrifying wave of power which rebounded back towards Xue Chengbai. Xue Chengbai's expression changed drastically, and he swiftly jumped out of the way to let the wave of power pass through. Divine metal would not launch an attack on its own accord, but when attacked, it could rebound the strike. This would be terrifying because once the attack was compounded with the destructive power of divine metal itself, it wasn't something one could withstand unless one's battle prowess was at the level of the 9th heaven. A spatial god tool made of divine metal. Seeing this, the group of powerful elites exclaimed in surprise. It was too extravagant indeed. Other people didn't even have one celestial tool, whilst here they were, already forging a spatial celestial tool with divine metal. So what? Gu Hui sneered. This celestial tool was merely something they had forged themselves, and doesn't even have the formation patterns laid out by a great 9th heaven celestial king tier. It shouldn't be difficult to crack. That's right. Niao Tsangyu and the others nodded in unison. Come, let's join forces to crack it. The 6 powerful elites joined forces to strike again, but this time the attack was targeting neither Ling Han nor the Empress, but rather the celestial guest residents. They were all really greedy. This was actually an item made of divine metal. Even if they seized it, and did not choose to reforge it as a weapon, it was already very impressive solely based on the fact that it was a spatial celestial tool. If there were exceptional formation patterns on it, then they wouldn't need to fear even 9th heaven celestial kings. These were the formation patterns laid by Ling Han with his cultivation level of the 5th heaven, hence, they weren't difficult to crack. After only half a day, the 6 powerful elites sneered. Success. Ling Han, die. From the moment they entered, they saw a blur in their vision as a human figure shot out towards them. Ling Han. The group of 5 including Niao Tsangyu took a few steps back. They were too fearful of Ling Han, moreover, they were even more fearful that Ling Han had already refined the celestial fruit, and had brought his strength to a higher level. There's no need to be afraid, it's impossible for him to refine the celestial fruit in just a day and a half, Gu Hui said immediately, taking the lead in launching an attack. Ling Han's right hand waved, and the divine demon sword was drawn. Ding, 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 the 2 prodigies were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Indeed, it was as Gu Hui had said, even if Ling Han had a physique of time, a mere 1.5 days' time was insufficient for him to refine the celestial fruit, raise his cultivation level to the peak stage of the 5th heaven, and break through to the 6th heaven. However, Ling Han had no choice but to come out, as the formations of celestial guest residents had been broken through, and soon the enemy would be closing in on them rapidly. At that time, he would not only be forced into a fierce battle, but also put all the women in danger. Seeing that Ling Han's strength hadn't improved much, the group of 5 including Niao Tsangyu breathed a sigh of relief, and then launched their attacks consecutively. Ling Han kept fighting, even if he hadn't broken through to the 6th heaven yet, his battle prowess was still higher than that of the Empress. Striking with fists and sword, he began to break free of their encirclement. The blockade surrounding them had already been destroyed by heavenly tribulation. Don't even think about it. The 5 including Niao Tsangyu immediately leaped aside one after the other to set up a new confinement around them. Ling Han smiled coldly. If all of you insist on courting death, then I will fulfill your wish. Your death is imminent. Gu Hui kept on badgering Ling Han, preventing him from having a chance to escape, while the other 5 including Niao Tsangyu set up the restrictions. Thereafter, they joined forces with Gu Hui to kill Ling Han. This brat has got such soaring levels of vitality, his body is a treasure in itself. Perhaps I can directly break through to the 9th heaven if I refine him. Jiao Yu said as his eyes swept over Ling Han's body without any scruples. What he meant was that he would refine Ling Han alive into an alchemical pill, which he would then ingest. That's right, with such amazing body art, the physical body is indeed a treasured medicine. Rong Wenlin nodded, licking his lips with his tongue. At their level, they only had eyes for striving towards the 9th heaven. Under this premise, they could disregard all principles and human ethics. Kill. The attacks of these celestial kings were even more violent. They knew that it was already impossible to get their hands on the greenish-black flowing ripple fruit, but if Ling Han was to be refined into medicine, the effect would be the same, or perhaps even better. Kill, kill, kill. They fixed their eyes on Ling Han. If this went on, they would eventually kill him. Yet Ling Han actually kept silent, which was uncharacteristic of him. He just continued to attack with his sword without saying a word. It's just stubborn resistance. Gu Hui sneered. Although he had yet to see the dawn of victory and wouldn't anytime soon, he believed that it wouldn't take long for this day to come. Whether it was 10 days, a month, or even half a year or a century, Gu Hui would persevere until he killed Ling Han with his own hands. Time was passing by quickly, and Ling Han's situation was getting worse and worse. The combined power of the 6 powerful elites was really too terrifying. Furthermore, each one of them knew how to launch spiritual attacks, causing Ling Han to be riddled with injuries, and the indestructible true fluid was no longer sufficient to heal his wounds. His injuries were so severe that his battle prowess had plummeted to rock bottom. Try a little harder, he won't be able to hold on any longer. Fu Yunhai exclaimed. Kill! The 6 powerful elites all had bloodshot eyes. At this moment, Ling Han's body suddenly erupted with an incomparably powerful aura, as if a tsunami, which caused the 6 powerful elites to shudder uncontrollably. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.